Hey, it's Crumbs. You're lost? How do you not know where you are? It's Thorin's channel.
Neighbour, your topic was an interesting one because you basically wanted to discuss. Wait there a second, I'm just going to check it. Right, a very quite a controversial one. So actually, before I state your topic, let me ask you first of all: are you a fan of FNATIC? Are you someone who follows FNATIC?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
Right. So this is a very interesting topic then, because most FNATIC fans. Part of the reason why they get a lot of stick, as we say in the UK, they get a lot of criticism, is they are, it's like the name, they are fanatics. They go too far. They all think every player is great and they can't take any criticism and they have to believe that FNATIC's the best and every player in FNATIC is the best. And if you say no otherwise, this is how you know they're on like a religious level. They act as though you've just like said like, God doesn't exist. And they're like, kill the heathen. Like, so your opinion, a very, very bold one, is even though you're a FNATIC fan, you actually think basically that they need to replace Broxah and Nemesis. You didn't say anything else, but I'm assuming to become the best, right? That's the premise.
Yeah, I think that to consistently be the best, they'd have to replace both.
Okay, right. Make your case then. Well, why would you say?
First of all, with Broxah, like watching like nearly every game, they pretty much split. If he doesn't go like 3-0 in the first 10 minutes, the team legit falls apart. Like he doesn't know what to do. Like he'll either, because I obviously listening to Veteran as well, you can see it. He either permacanks top and then just leaves bot. Or he had a purple against bot and then leaves top, which happened in Spring Split, and that's why Whippo just entered every game because he just ran about and was just like, oh, all right, I'm not going to go top side anymore, boys. Just that's it. And then this split, they've changed it around, so they're just abandoning bot and then just keep playing the top side. So I just feel like you just need to play a jungler who can actually play both sides of the map. Like
right, let's do this. We'll do it player by player. So we'll make the case for Broxah first, and we'll do that. So actually, Veteran, I have a question on this point, which is, I know you messaged me during it. So did you watch most of that Listen Loco episode that I had Zabatine on, the optic coach?
I came in like, I feel like halfway through, because I came in because people...
Did you hear when he explained how Meteos plays the game?
I was there when he explained how Meteos interacts with teammates.
Yes, this is the point I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? If you listen to this section, so obviously everyone can't go and do it now, but anyone watching this VOD, go to the Listen Loco episode. I think maybe it's like halfway through. Skip through the episode until Zabatine, the coach of Optic, talks about what it's like to have Meteos as a jungler, right? And the way he describes Meteos has now lowered my... I thought I couldn't go any lower. I'm going for like fucking... it's like esports limbo here. Has now lowered my respect for NA players and teams another 20%. Because basically, the whole reason Meteos is like a fucking god tier jungler in LCS Veteran is when he plays, he basically sort of coaches the laners into how he needs them to talk to him to make it productive. So the example he gave was, whereas a laner who's just an idiot who's played solo queue would say, I need you to help me now in lane. Like, Meteos would say to them, well, no, that's not true. Like, you don't need me to help you. What you need is you have set up the lane incorrectly and you're now down and you need me to, like, save you is what you need. Like, you're making it sound like it'd be, like, a positive. Like, I need to actually come and rescue your lane state now. Like, so if you explain it to me that way, I might even come and do it, That's, like, a reasonable way to say it. Like, if I've made a mistake, Meteos, can you come and fix it in this way? That's, like, a great way to say it. So the point is, this is someone where... he's not just doing some shit like it's not like, this game I'm just going to gank the bot lane and ignore top. Like, that's not even League of Legends, mate. That's like some shit where it's like, that's almost like what I'd say in a show match if I'm letting some kid play. Like, listen, kid, just gank bot only, we'll play safe top. Like, I wouldn't run a fucking team like that. So, what do you think on this one, Veteran? Because obviously, it's a topic we've gone over a lot, but the context here is a crazy one. Because the context here is if we replaced him entirely. So, it basically... But as he said there, you've given your opinion already. I'm assuming you agree because you've listed like 4 or 5 junglers you'd choose over him. But what would that jungler need to bring to make it worth swapping out Broxah? Put it that way. What would you need to add to FNATIC?
Like independence and their own agency. Because the reason that So, from my experience on being in teams, the only reason why you would have to be so dogmatic about specific early game plans and why it would have to be relayed in such a dogmatic fashion is that your own jungler doesn't have agency within the game itself. Like, I don't think, and I obviously have inside info, so like I know how the communication system works in FNATIC. I know what they can and can't rely on him to do in that regard. But if your jungler doesn't have agency in the way that Meteos has agency, then you lose any sort of flexibility in regards to how you want to play the game out in the early stage, which has resulted in FNATIC being like the absolute definition of feast or famine in the early game, because either this plan works or it doesn't. And they had so many really feast or famine creative things that they were doing even in spring, like the Nocturne level 2 gank, for example, that has never been repeated on junglers that you can theoretically level 2 dive on. He did it on fucking Nocturne. Like they're creating a lot of scenarios that the opponent wouldn't necessarily expect coming in from draft to give themselves early leads, and then they only play to like accelerate that particular lead. But the guy who is playing with like absolute fidelity in game and around the map is not the jungler. The jungler is only doing one very specific thing, which is why I was so disappointed in how Cold played today, by the way, versus him. The guy who is actually playing the map with proper agency is actually Hylissang, which is why I think that playing from bot to top is the best way that FNATIC have found, because number one, obviously you can fix the wave bot side in the way that you can't top side, but number two, Hylissang, if Hylissang is on the map and directing things, you have more options other than just, okay, the top thing is not going as well as we want, we're kind of fucked. If you can give Hylissang some sort of agency, then the team can be safe, but you can't rely on Hylissang controlling the entire map early game, like forever, you know? And when teams have disrupted that from FNATIC have really fucking collapsed in the early game. Broxah doesn't have agency himself. He starts making terrible decisions, especially with regards to his resets, which is an area that I think that G2, for example, actually ahead of everybody on. And this is an area that FNATIC can't even begin to develop because their entire early game strategy is based around band-aiding the fact that their jungler doesn't have agency. So there are multiple junglers in the league that currently do have agency. One guy who has agency is Cadril, for example, and I would legitimately recommend him. Selfmade has agency. Dan, who they have on the substitute, does have agency by himself. And even though it's like Hiva, right? Like you guys saw how everyone saw how impactful Hiva was in their recent win over FNATIC. He wasn't necessarily a better and more consistent player than Gorilla, but he is what they need. Dan, even if you think, like, I obviously don't think that he's worse than Broxah, but even if you think he's worse than Broxah, he is what they need if they want to develop in the long term. And you guys can point to how at Rift Rivals, like, they're the worst time versus Team Liquid than they did when they had Broxah, but right now FNATIC are a team that's being beaten by, like, almost anyone at this point, except for teams that are noticeably on a downward trend. So you really have to start considering composition over like star power, star names, and your own particular fandom towards this guy. So that would be what I think they need to add from a jungle perspective. Given how Nemesis is more vocal now than he was before, maybe they can turn Broxah into that kind of player. But again, it requires almost a personality transplant. So I wouldn't necessarily believe that would be the case. So that's my whole take on the Broxah thing.
Right, neighbour, let's go on do you want to go on the Nemesis angle now, or do you have any follow-up to the Broxah part?
Well, for the Broxah part, like, especially, it's essentially, if like Nemesis became more vocal, it'd be essentially what like, Caps was with FNATIC. Like, basically, like, with Caps basically directing Broxah what he wanted to do, now it's just Nemesis what he wanted to do. So it feels like they'd be just in the same situation they were like when they had Caps and have now this.
Okay.
So like,
what's your main complaint against Nemesis then?
I feel it's just champ pool issues. I don't know why, but it just seems he always goes to the same champs nearly every game. Like, I don't know what it is, but he just feels like he doesn't like play other champs apart from TF, like Aatrox especially. Like, I know he used to be able to cast him one trick and things like that. And like, he plays Corki a lot. I just feel like I know the mid meta is like obviously is he a Corki, but it feels like he just relies on too much on Corki and TF. Like, he doesn't even want to play Azir. Like, I've never seen him play an Azir game, like, or split. Like, so it just feels like he has massive champion issues, and it's like I feel like you could probably pick up like a mid laner with better champion issues just as good as him.
The only champions he's played more than once this split are Twisted Fate and Corki.
Yeah.
On all of the other champions, he has a 3-2 rate on them. One of those that he lost on is Aatrox. Okay, I forgot that he swapped. So actually, eliminate Xayah. Xayah from this ranking.
That was a game.
Yeah, he has an Aatrox loss. He has a Sylas win. He played Sylas last split, and that was a champion that on a previous patch allowed for pretty easy mid prio. And then he has his Rise here. So the one Irelia game is like the only game that really breaks pattern in terms of what these champions give you. out of all of these, because it's Rise, Silas, Corki, TF, and only Corki TF has he brought out more than once. It's interesting you bring up the Azir point, because I know he can actually play Azir.
Yeah.
His champ pool that I would always think of when he was on Mad Lions was Azir, Corki, and Rise. Those were the champions that I always considered to be like the Nemesis champion pool. And with Azir, he played really well around mid-priority of Self-Made, and now we know how impactful Self-Made was in the communications in that regard. But yeah, he's basically played TF mostly for more than half of this split. So I agree with you there that there are huge champ pool issues, and it really makes me laugh when, because I don't expect FNATIC to start saying, yeah, obviously our mid lane has champ pool issues. Like, I can accept if Young Buck is going to say that he doesn't have champ pool issues, if that's a criticism being levied at him. But I can't be the only guy who found it hilarious that he said that we took Nemesis over Leader because we think Nemesis can play any champion, and then Nemesis gets stomped on like one of the most powerful fucking solo lane champions in the game by Leader, and Leader fucking breaks a record in front of his face the first time they meet up. I can't be the only one who found that hilarious, because I found that fucking hilarious. But obviously I don't blame Young Buck for wanting to defend this player.
What do you think about the angle on replacing him, though? Do you think it would be a good move?
I don't think he's going to develop his champ pool to the extent that he needs to not necessarily be a detriment, but I honestly think the jungle thing is a much bigger thing, and we have seen mids with terrible champ pools do well. So long as you can perform your function as a mid across multiple metas, then I think you're fine. I'll
give you a counterpoint, though. You ready for a counterpoint?
Yeah, I am.
The worst mid laner to ever win EU LCS is probably Febiven. That's how good you have to be as a mid to win LCS.
It's actually true.
The only ones that have won is like Expeke, Froggen, and Perks, Caps, and Febiven. So out of them, Febiven is the worst of the bunch, and he's a pretty fucking good player. So listen, maybe it's possible. Like in theory, it should be, obviously. But I feel as though if you look at teams, because this is one of the flaws I've noticed, Veteran. One thing that's killing me about the community at the moment is I'm sick of teams that are almost the best but not the best. And the mentality of the fan is never like, right, well, we'll take the gamble that could make us the best. It's always like, well, this is good enough. And it's like, no, but we're talking about being the best, though. Like, one of the problems people have is when you're almost, say you're the second best team. Well, on paper, the only team that has a better record's the other team. You're not getting their mid lane, right? Yeah. So I've noticed fans, Loco himself is absolutely infected with this thinking. Like, I'm not joking. In Loco's mind, he would never kick like a TSM jungler, because it's like, but this other guy's in a bad team. It's like, yeah, dumb fuck, where are we going to get the players from? Like, the rivals are going to give you their best player, is it? Like, so you got to gamble eventually. That's why it's called a gamble, bro. But the difference is, to me, call me crazy, I don't call it a gamble to pick up Soaz after an off year. I call that fucking investment into the stock market. I buy when it's low and I know it will go high again. I am now rich. Like, these guys want it to already be high but at a low price. That's not going to exist. So in this scenario, what I'm basically saying is either League's going to be different and FNATIC's going to be the first to do it, or Nemesis is going to have to be on a kind of level of the players I was just talking about if you want to win the league, it feels like. Because let's face it, mid lane, it will always be one of the most important roles. So the question is kind of, can he get to that level? Do you think so? If the rest of the team's set up correctly, if he has the right jungler, could he do it?
Nemesis thinks, like, I don't hate him, and I actually really do want him to succeed, and I really do want to be able to sit here and say that, like, he's young, obviously he's stuck in his ways right now, maybe with the correct encouragement, he could expand his champ pool to the point where it's not just, like, random counter picks like Vega and, like, on average just only bringing up, like, one additional champion a split, but it's so difficult to say that. Whereas on the other hand, Leader actually brought out stuff like Cassio, for example, in the LFL. And I know there are other majors that he is practicing really hard. Like, even if you'd say that he just plays like Assassins and melee matchups, those are actually pretty strong right now as like niche counter picks for a lot of like Corki is in the meta again. Of course Assassins can be good in that.
Sure.
And at the same time, I know that he is developing his champ pool faster than Nemesis is. Like, I'd have less problems in ban phase with Leader on my team than I would have Nemesis if teams started targeting me in that way. It's but you know I have a bias when it comes to like young rookie players, and you know that I genuinely just I don't want to say that like you can't do it with Nemesis. It feels like he's too young, but maybe a way to phrase it is that if you view it from that lens that you're giving me, as FNATIC, you don't necessarily have a reason to think right now that you can. And maybe Nemesis proves you wrong on another team, and God, I would root for him to prove FNATIC wrong on another team. But right now, as FNATIC, I guess you could look at Nemesis as something that you might want to potentially replace. Obviously, people in my chat right now that are saying Whippo, but again, like you guys go from overrating Whippo to underrating Whippo. It's really insane.
I don't think Whippo was the problem. Generally, it was left a dead last split.
Yeah, and if we go to like the problem is that the jungle system is actually just a series of band-aids to try to stop the bleeding that will occur the moment that teams expose the strategy, and they have been doing it now. They just have been doing it. You can't fucking ignore it at this point. You can't ignore the fact that the way FNATIC has been winning games is just through a series of fucking band-aids, and that the problem is very obvious. Because if you do ignore that, you definitely will never be the best. And that, like, Brox is the guy that you would have to look at for that.
Okay. What about you, neighbor? Like, since you obviously implied you wanted him replaced, like, what kind of, like, obviously we didn't do this before because it's all hypothetical, but what type of a player would you like to see as a mid laner for FNATIC if you could bring one in?
Well, you look at like Larson. He's on like anyone like that. Because obviously they had to wait, and that's why they couldn't get Larson. I imagine they probably looked at Larson, but obviously he had to wait until this split because he went to finish off school. But obviously I know for a fact that Young Buck did have a choice between Leader and Nemesis, and that he chose Nemesis because apparently when Young Buck phoned him, he said, "Oh, I'd learned to play any champ." Like that was the most reason why they actually took Nemesis over Leader. So
see, what's great about that though is, neighbor, I've got to tell you, if it had all worked out and if for some reason Nemesis had become like the next Perks and they were winning, that then becomes a great story in like a documentary, you know, like, and then he told me, you know, like, I'm the man for you, you know, I can play in champion. Obviously the reason that's hilarious is because A, he hasn't done that, and then B, it's also just such a ludicrous reason to pick someone, like as though he was like weighing it up like, which one do I pick? I've got Leader over here like this, and then he like calls up Leader, and then the joke would be, if you've watched Elitists at United, Leader would be like, nah, bro, I'll just be the best of these two champions. He's like, no, but I'm just asking, would you be open to? Yeah, I'd be the best. Be open to being the best of these champions. Like, the idea is Leader wouldn't know, but he's just wrecking himself in the interview, isn't he?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I can't imagine Leaders just saying, I only want to play Yasuo and Akali, and that's it, man. Like, I can't imagine him just saying that. Like,
I can. I'm not gonna lie. I can imagine.
In his own way, he would.
But my approach when it comes to players like that is that, okay, well, you're a kid. I don't really give a flying fuck. You are gonna start playing other fucking champions. I know he can definitely learn these. Like, I've seen these players before. I know he can, and I mean, I've seen him actually play all of these other champions now as well. So it's just a case of like, you have to. You might have to be firm with Leader as a coach if you want to make sure that he continues on that road.
They do have Young Buck.
They do have Young Buck. So I don't think that Young Buck would have necessarily looked at Leader and seen Leader say this and be like, wherever. I guess it's impossible. I do think though that maybe Young Buck didn't necessarily like watch enough of Leader. I don't think anyone watched enough of Leader pre-split. Like, I was the only person saying before the season that Leader was actually like the next big deal. I did give my opinion on Leader actually to them. So they did have that information, but I don't think that they had like their own independent information to it. But maybe from his perspective, he just looks at the OPGG, hasn't watched enough to come up with his own independent opinion. I honestly believe if Young Buck like watched enough of Leader, he would have come to the same conclusion as I did.
Yeah. All I'm going to say is this, boys. Like I said, I'll just use the old contrast and I'll just leave it like I'll hit the fadeaway and just walk off the court. All I'm going to say is this. You know, I said before, the worst ever mid laner to win LCS, EU LCS or LEC is Febervin, right?
Yeah.
All I'm going to tell you is this. Paul Belter is a 3-time LCS champion. Right, that's the end of that segment. I'll leave everyone to make up their own minds. You can think whatever you like about team building, about the world. Those are facts. You can't argue with them. They're on paper. It's absolutely in a court of law. I can defend that. And right, thanks a lot, neighbour. Cheers, mate. Thanks for the topic. Thanks. What's sad is you guys don't realise this, but here's what's funny. I'm just going to use this for a mini rant. I might even put this in the episode. It's exactly you guys who want drama who have ruined the scene for yourselves so you don't get any drama because you can't handle the drama and process it like an adult. If you enjoyed it, you mute your mic a sec if you type in. If you enjoyed it, what you'd do is you would just enjoy the drama. You'd even post the same comments like, I disagree, I think Veteran's a piece of shit and biased or whatever, and that would be fine. But because you all try to get people fired and start massive hate trains against them, nobody will come on shows and give you drama. Like, I can tell you, I don't know if Veteran followed esports back then, but StarCraft 2 was the golden era for drama. The whole thing where I got wrecked over that Poland shit was because there used to be a famous StarCraft 2 show called Unfiltered, where the premise of the show was you go on it and you flame people and you say what you really think about the player you think shit, or the caster you think's overrated. And guess what? If you loved that sort of niche, it was a great format, actually. Like, it made people feel as though it was a safe environment. People know going in, this isn't a normal talk show. And you could have all the beef. You could have people battling each other, people calling each other pieces of shit. It was really fucking hype. The problem is, people then started to decide, right, not only did I not like that person's opinion, I will now get that person's life ruined. And so as a result, there's about 4 people left in the whole scene will even give you any drama. When I do it, idiots still complain like, how unprofessional is that? Even though they lap it up and can't stop watching the content. And then the other part is, all the other people, there's loads of pros out there would give you like really spicy up. They won't do it because they think to themselves now, what's the point in gambling? All I'm doing is gambling, everyone hating me for fucking years. Or like all the examples you see where someone like Forgiven said like the wrong thing and then 2 years later, but remember that time he said that about this player? Like, exactly. Who wants to live with that for the rest of your life? So you all ruined it for yourself. If you could have just sat there like the little plebs you are, eating a fucking Twinkie, drinking Gatorade, watching the Kardashians, you could have had all sorts of that content. You could have had some amazing shows. Instead, you ruined it for yourself. So you know what? As your punishment, I'm gonna turn loose fucking 100 episodes of Kelsey Moser on you, where she just breaks shit down. She slightly her voice slightly goes up on each word. You can't even handle that, can you? It's tilting the fuck out of you. But everything she's saying, straight fire. But the problem is, you can't get into it, can you? Because you'd have to focus the whole time she's talking. And you're used to just listening to something offhand on Hotline League while you're going like, help Jungler, help me, I'm going all in on Tebow. And then like, you're just listening to Max, like, I think that High could play in another. You're like, oh yeah, brilliant. Oh, what do you think, Travis? It's like, that's the world you've created. This is your punishment. You created the world you wanted. The secret is real. The law of attraction is real. You've just attracted the most shit world to all of us ever. You massive cunts working as a magnet for the worst things in esports. Probably put that segment in. Is he ready to come on the chat now?
Yes.
Right, bring him in. Chuck him in. There we go. It's all right. It's all right. I had to just do it. I had to do it. Because obviously that is like, Kelsey Moser is their reckoning. I love her. That's the whole thing. I just love making people sit through that shit. Because what's great is they try to always complain. Like, and what she was saying was nonsense. It's like, mate, you get on the call. You should brutalise your ass, mate. What's hilarious is they don't even realise that every episode of Narrative Wait, Kelsey was actually being pretty polite. Wait till she sees someone she doesn't respect in order of like Loco. You see what happened there? That was fucking like, he was like the fucking criminal who's like, doesn't know you can call for a lawyer. And he's just like under that hot light, like, any chance I could get a drink in here? And they're like, well, there'll be a drink after you've answered some of our questions, sir. What were you doing on the night of the 9th? Oh, I don't know, man, shit. Fuck. I think I was like at my friend's house or something. It's like, just call for the lawyer, motherfucker. You can't handle this shit. Like, just get out of that. Anyway, what is your topic that you'd like to talk about, Arnold?
Okay. So I've been hearing a veteran stream lately, and he's been talking pretty much at the OG jungle system and how cold. And I all listened to the Elitists United show with him that he tried to innovate in his jungle path. And Veteran just said that he tried to try different pathings. The first one, like trying only for jungle priority and dragon priority, that you think it was Mithy.
So the last weekend he was going specifically for jungle matchup, yes. And before that and since Rift Rivals it was for
jungle priority.
Yeah, like they even changed like specific champion priority as well. Yeah. Like they went with Sedge priority, which I personally think is one of the most broken junglers in the game, and then they moved to more aggressive jungler priority as well to go with it. Yeah.
So I think I barely followed the stream because I'm silver scraped, so I got this game. But I kind of followed. So before that, Gold and OG had maybe the best early game system in the league. And I really do not know why they changed it. I mean, it was working. They were winning games. They were like top of the league. And for some reason, and I think Gold said it was like predictable or something. But why if it's predictable, but it's keep working?
Basically, Veteran, If it ain't broke, why fix it? Now proceed.
Okay, so I think that they've looked at teams like FNATIC and what was working really well for them, which was the complete opposite of what was working really well for Origin. They looked at G2 and saw what was working really well for them. And
Wait there a second. Is your mum like fucking dragging you off the PC, slapping your face right now?
No, it's my mom that she has to go to sleep. And he's telling me bye.
All right, good night, love you. Right, can we end that part now? Right, go on, Veggie, keep going,
Not
mate.
single.
Just mute your mic. Just tell her, hasta luego, hasta mañana, and fucking kiss her and do it all off mic, mate. Just mute the shit. Right, go on, Veteran.
It's still
okay, and then they looked at G2.
Listen, I've already had to deal with fucking one mum fucking everything up for OG that was Spanish, so can we at least keep it to just one on this topic? By the way, I've even said in the past, because she won, you know what, I'll give everyone a little Easter egg here. One time, Expeke's mum tried to banter me on Twitter, so I just figured out in Spanish how to basically tell her something like, yeah, I love watching the best EU mid laner, frogging, in Spanish, to her face. Like, listen, I told everyone, I don't go after people's mothers, but if they come after me on Twitter, they can fucking get that work. I'll put in work, motherfucker. Listen, just because you be creating human life, yeah, I could be creating fucking banter. Right, anyway, go ahead, Veteran. Go ahead, please.
So they looked at the other top teams, and the other top teams were doing a lot better than them early on in the split with regards to their consistency in winning. Like FNATIC went straight up on the win streak. G2 basically looked like they have to troll to lose, but they also look like they win when they troll, so it's like really difficult. And they tried to like incorporate aspects of their play into their own play, and that's why I think they're doing it. I think they want to see what does and doesn't work about them relative to their own style, and see if there's anything that they can learn from that, and then incorporate into their standard like early game kind of like smothering style. At the very least, I hope that they will make their way back towards their kind of early game style by the time we reach playoffs. Hopefully, they fucking reach playoffs, but it seems like when they do this, they forget like what their win conditions in terms of position even are, and sometimes even fundamentally, if you want to do some of the things that they're doing, there's going to be a mismatch in terms of their win conditions. And today was like a huge fucking example of that. Wherein like I actually really like the draft from today. Like I think I tweeted that the draft from today was, it seemed like Miffy had like a really nice draft idea that would work specifically against FNATIC, but Cold had his like headphones and was listening to music the whole time he was trying to explain it to them. It was like okay, yeah, got it, and then just like path straight to dot perm and just ignored the fucking Leona Draven bot. That's like perfect, because Hylissang would normally want to just like leave Reckless alone after fixing the wave for him. He would want to trade HP to get into a good wave state. Draven Leona kind of prevents you doing either of those two things, and even if you stay in lane with that kind of lane that they had bot side, then you're very vulnerable in a 2v2 scenario versus Draven Leona, and you're incredibly vulnerable to dives from them. And that's really good, because Boxer will never even touch bot side again after his initial clears. He'll just go top side and just try to snowball the Rengar. And then on top of that, they ended up with like Aftershock on Draven, which you could proc if you just eat the fucking Rengar away in time. And even in like the final fight, you saw that had value, because you didn't just get straight up one shot, you got two shot instead by the Rengar. But you know, there was still value there. So yeah, I could see the idea behind it. But then coming into it, Cole does like a red buff into like a full topside clear when Broxer just does like 3 camps into a topside gank. He does blue, red, Krugs into a topside gank. And it's like, if you've strategize your draft so blatantly for FNATIC, why aren't you strategizing your jungle pathing for what you know Brox is going to do? Because it's fucking FNATIC. Everyone knows what Brox is going to do at this point. Why not just do red Krugs into blue into a top match? Like, I have no idea why you didn't bother doing that, and suddenly FNATIC have tempo on the top side of the map. And then I never see Jarvan go bot side to make an acceleration play. Cold go bot side to do an acceleration play for like the entire game with fucking Draven Leona. Like, it blew my mind. So like, there was such a disconnect between their win conditions and their jungle style, and I think that while they've been like switching it up in the jungle in the previous weekends, I'm obviously going to have to go a lot more in depth into what they were doing this weekend with jungle before I have like a cohesive idea on if there was some sort of like definite experiment they were doing. Like, I think while they've been experimenting, though, they've kind of forgotten about their actual lane-based win conditions more often than not. And I think that's the disconnect that is causing them to lose when we're talking about jungle.
Yeah, but I want to say, why change the system that was already working?
Because there might be something that works better about the other systems that were on giga win streaks early on. Like before they hit Rift Rivals, FNATIC was on a win streak and G2 were on a win streak. So from their perspective, who they weren't on a win streak, they were actually losing to these top teams. To G2, for example, like why wouldn't they try to incorporate something for see if there's something to learn there, with the assumption that they'll make playoffs regardless. Like I can understand the logic if you just get into the mindset of it's working now, therefore it will always work, then you might end up like FNATIC, who are now getting abused, not actually through anything that they have changed specifically, but just because everyone has figured them out. Or Vitality, who will never again reach the peak that they did when they initially came in to the scene and everyone was figuring things out, but they were just doing one thing over and over again, you know? Like if you get stagnant and stale, you'll obviously stop developing. How can you not stop developing? How can you develop if you're stagnant and stale? And obviously Origin weren't perfect before, so why would they be happy with just being like good enough then? Like obviously they're going to try to incorporate more and more things into their style, so I understand it from that perspective. But obviously
I'll even throw in an angle of my own on this one,
Go on.
which is that of all the teams who should experiment, I think Origin is the most obvious one, because look at how many tools they have in this team. They have like an amazing roster of players. So if you aren't number one, right, I know, unfortunately, because of how Season 9's gone, everyone's going to think this is a stupid comment, but the fact you don't have the best players doesn't mean you just roll over and go, oh, well, I guess you have the better players, G2, you just win then. No. Like, in theory, if you revolutionized and innovated some new style of play or made a new interaction between some of the players on your team, you could be better than G2, even if their players are better than you. Like, it's happened many times in all team games, including League of Legends. The best players don't always win the league. So, like, and that's why, actually, I like the fact that people, ever since G2 became the MSI champions, at least focus now on the G2 system and what G2's actually doing, because it's a distraction to look at the star players. Like, the shit they do with all the crazy, like, mechanical outplays wouldn't happen without the system. Like, if you just threw those players into a team in the way that Misfits did, it could just be like Misfits. It could just be mad underwhelming. So I feel as though if you're a team like Origin, keep going until you find something that can make you the best. Why not? You've got the pieces.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like when you get in a place where you're not doing that, it's only because of ego, you know? Like, I feel like Misfits got into that point just on the basis of the idea in their head of, like, how good they were. Like, they just allowed their ego to kind of stunt their development in a sense. And I think you have to avoid that. So I'm happy if Origin are willingly avoiding that. I'm not going to delude myself into thinking that they're obviously, like, being a good team right now. They're not, and this is explicitly why they're not, and these are the explicit things they're doing in game that are just wrong, and these are the disconnects that they have in game. Like they're but this is not stuff I could ever say about Origin pre-Rift Rivals. That stuff just didn't exist pre-Rift Rivals, you know? Like, I don't want anyone to think I still think Origin, as they are right now, are straight up a top 2 team. When I now say that Origin can still just make it to World 2 playoffs anyway, that's on like a similar level to when I was saying that FNATIC could still win the whole thing last split.
They still have the pieces to potentially do it if they got it all together.
They still have the pieces to potentially do it. Yeah, like that's still my line on them.
Yeah, the difference is when you talk about like an obvious counterpoint to like a Splice, it's just unlikely that with Splice's pieces they can be number one no matter what they do. Like, I don't blame those guys. Like, you put it this way, if Splice actually ends up being like the third or the second best team, they fucking killed it. What a great job they'll have done.
I somewhat disagree on that. I actually think that their roster is stronger than FNATIC. I actually think overall it is stronger than FNATIC's. The big thing FNATIC have is that they have the second best bot lane in the entirety of the LEC, but then everyone else requires band-aids repeatedly. I actually don't think that Splice's roster requires band-aids. That's why I said that Splice were a dark horse way back in December, just based on strength of roster. And I ended up getting like the top 4 completely correct.
Here's my prediction for you, Veteran. Are you ready? There is no mythical progress or growth. Splice that you see today is the peak of what Splice will be. They're a good team. They have a chance to beat some of these teams in the best of 5. Probably would lose to a bunch of the top ones. And I don't think those players ever will. Like, here's the thing.
That's not
think about it, right?
It's not
the players at all. But put it this way: if your coaching staff has had those guys in a room for like 20 weeks or something mad, maybe it's not quite 20, maybe it's 15 or something. There's not going to be something that comes up on week 16 that suddenly changes the whole paradigm. Like, you wanted this system, you built this system, you liked every signpost you were following. Like, you didn't, it's not like they just were rolling the dice like, oh, well, bad luck this time, roll again. Oh, let's have a re-roll. It's like, they chose these things. So as a result, I give them props where they've gotten the teams good. I just don't see that you're going to go beyond that because you'd have to change the whole paradigm of the team, I feel like, to go to another level of this squad. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that it's kind of like Vitality. You probably want to address the backroom issue first. Like, there's something going fundamentally wrong in the conversations that you're having and your approach to developing. I don't think that, for Splice especially, that it's a roster issue. I think that they're still my dark horse for Worlds until they just start subbing out their players. Because their players, just based on roster strength, should be a team that threatens to go to Worlds. It really fucking should be.
Right, anyway, is that everything okay there, mate?
Yeah, well, I want to say one last thing.
Come on then.
I was the guy that introduced fractal wrongness in the chat.
Yeah.
So that's
Thank you very much. Guys, if you want to know what he's talking about, type !wrong in the chat. He basically gave us a copy pasta. It's beautiful.
Right, anyway, thank you, mate. Cheers.
Bye. Good night.
So...
By the way, I'll give you a quick aside because you'll appreciate this, right? You know, when people try to wreck me, one of the things they often do is they cite a player disagreeing with me. Like, why don't you just listen to Perks when he tells you about Reckless? It's like, first of all, you are aware that actually most of the time you find out what players think by the conspicuous absence of an opinion on a topic. It's not by what they say, because a player will never reveal the weakness of his teammate. It'll never happen ever in the history of the world. So, for example, I could literally give you an example. I can't because it'll reveal who they are. But a few seasons ago, I knew a coach and I knew a player, and publicly, this coach kept getting flamed for the draft. They were like, why don't you pick Champion X for player Y? And when I asked the coach, he literally told me, well, the thing is that player cannot play one side of the matchup, but I don't want to say it publicly because I don't want like people to attack the player. And so basically this coach just had to take it up the ass from fans every week. Meanwhile, they were overrating the player because they thought that he was just not letting the player play this matchup. And by the way, the matchup one was ridiculous. It was one of these ones where it was like, I won't say the specific matchups, I'll change it for the sake of argument. So you ready, right? Remember a few seasons back where people always said Zed was a counter to Azir? That was like the lane counter, right?
I remember.
So what happened was the coach would be saying, and this is an example, what about if I get you Azir versus Azir? Then the player was like, yeah, but they could still pick Zed and counter me. And he goes, well, what about if I just first pick you Zed then? And he goes, but I can't play Zed versus Azir. Now, that coach cannot come out and explain that this motherfucker can't play either side of one of the main meta matchups at the time. So that coach has to get wrecked by all fans. Meanwhile, do you think it was ever mentioned in an interview? It wasn't. None of you know right now which player or coach I'm talking about. Did any of his teammates ever out him? No, they never did. So a literal, factual limitation that this player had never ever will be released. But you guys want me to believe that when a player tells me that I'm wrong about something, that the player's right. Suck my mother. Boop. I don't know why I even edited myself. I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, same.
It's not my stream though.
I'm not gonna. You mute that. But
whatever. I know.
This is actually kind of funny because. Hey, Peter.
Hello.
Hi, Veteran.
Hey, this is funny because I've actually invited Peter on the show multiple times, but on Elitists United, and now when I finally get him on the show, it's on Elitists Online.
Well, I mean, basically, Thorin is exactly right? Like, the reason why I would never go on Elitists United is because I don't want to talk about Splice, because I know a lot of stuff behind the scenes which you guys don't know. And I'm sure you know lots about behind the scenes from other teams which I don't know. So it would be pointless to go and talk about Splice. And in fact, that's why we shouldn't talk about Splice at all.
By the way, why would that stop you?
I have to admit that I enjoy watching you guys shit on us every single week, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, okay, right, go then, make your case then. So your case was that Dan is the key pivotal point of the Misfits team, not as the eye test might tell you leader.
Oh, the reason why is that when people look at these kinds of teams, and when sort of more casual fans watch LEC, they tend to rate players who are the high resource players much higher than the low resource players. And if you watch Misfits play, and in fact they've done this for the last 8 months, Leader consistently has roaming support roaming from bot lane to mid. He consistently has Hiva and Kire, or Hiva and Obsess, last split, in his pocket all the time in the side lane, and he can basically play as aggressive as he wants. And his teammates know that if they don't follow him around, he will continue to play as aggressively as he wants, no matter what. So it's in their interest.
You may as well, exactly. It's like Caps, right? You may as well follow this motherfucker wherever he's going.
I mean, I think it's insulting to put Caps at the same level as Leader. Like, I mean, Caps.
Just as an analogy, mate.
It's definitely representative of Caps a few years ago, though, when he initially started playing.
But I mean, he got out of it very quickly, and it's really easy for Leader to look good when Hiva and Kira are there to cover him. And Dan has been consistently extremely solid throughout all of Misfits' run at EU Masters. Playing weak side, he's very smart about how he uses fog. He's very smart about when he split pushes, and he's very smart about when he rotates, if he rotates. And if you look at their game today, it was decided because Dan was on Vladimir versus Rumble, and Rumble rotated to mid 3 times, once even through vision, I think twice through vision, and Leader just continued to play aggressively. He didn't use his brain, and I'm going to get flamed for this, but like sometimes Leader doesn't use his brain, or he's arrogant enough to think that he will always be able to outplay, and he just died twice mid underneath his tower to roaming from mid. And I don't think it's reasonable to call a player a superstar player, or to have as high a rating as this if they are too unwilling to modify their style of play.
Okay. Did you just cut out there?
Sorry. Whereas if they're not smart enough to play on the map, whereas Dan is a player who's very consistently smart about working out where other players are on the map, and he draws so much pressure to him that it allows Leader to play as aggressively as he wants on the other side of the map. By himself, like when Misfits play their 3-1-1, he's consistently by himself on weak side with his support and jungle in the other side of the jungle, and he's consistently not getting caught out and consistently absorbing a huge amount of pressure. Misfits system doesn't work if they have 2 leaders in their team.
Right, here's the thing. We heard all of that. The point was very interesting. But actually, I'm glad you're a coach of Splice, because what I like about Splice is the boring inevitability and consistency. If Splice was up and down like your mic, I'd jump off a cliff, mate. I couldn't handle it. So I appreciate that your team, you don't have that issue normally. So, Veteran, what do you think of the topic?
Okay, so I don't disagree with most of what he says, except for potentially his conclusion. And I think that right now what you guys are going to see is like kind of a clash in where me and Peter prioritize certain skill sets on certain players. So just as a quick question, what do you think that my like public rating of Leader for this split, and like what I said how Leader would be if he started playing this split like has been? What do you think that was?
I would think that you would say his potential is 10, and how he's playing the split is maybe 6 or 7.
So what I said is that he's B tier, which is basically what you just said. This split, and that he could potentially become like an A tier and pushing into S tier next split. This is before he played any game, and I kind of stand by that. 2 things that you said that I really want to highlight. So the first thing is that you mentioned how Dan is incredibly consistent in when he pushes and when he doesn't around mid game. I typed to you when you brought up the question to me that I actually agree that the decisions Dan takes for whether or not he's going to economize or whether or not he's going to group, for example, are like incredibly are actually above most of what I see top laners do right now. And this includes even when it comes to G2 and certain mid game setups. And this was actually a big criticism I had of G2 in MSI. Like Dan doesn't actually make those kinds of mistakes. The way I've been characterizing Misfits Premier is that they are trying to play a wide map state, and obviously the first game, the Gangplank game, he was making certain grouping options that I don't agree with, particularly relative to the traits that they were going for. But I do agree with you that he is making really good decisions in the mid game in this regard that even Leader himself obviously isn't making around the map. Like Leader is not that smart about his map play. Like I will never deny that. It makes perfect sense to me that you would value someone who plays mid game so well and so consistently, given the problems on Splice.
I say nothing. I can't possibly comment about Splice.
Listen, all I'm going to tell you is, once in my life I had a really boring girlfriend, and you know what, Peter? All of a sudden, those party girls just seemed like the fucking dream. I just look and go, "Fucking hell, it'd be brilliant, wouldn't it?" But you know what? It's not that great when you wake up in the morning. You realise home cooking's the best.
True. But you said, and this is the second thing
Sure.
that you said that I really want to focus on, which is that you said that Dan was more consistent than anyone at EU Masters. But at EU Masters, he was not just playing, for example, the Ryze versus Jace matchup improperly in lane itself, but he would even take like the incorrect setup for it. And in discussions with him that I had after that, he didn't even necessarily understand what the correct setup for was, or even the actual windows that he has within the certain matchup. Dan's issue is a mechanical one. It's a laning phase one very specifically. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if you don't necessarily value that. But these kinds of intuitive, not necessarily intuitive, but these kinds of mechanics are the kind of things that I prefer players to build up intuitively on their own, because it does at the end of the day boil down to a mindset thing. You can't necessarily like shake this guy's hand and drag him through every fucking matchup in the game, especially as new matchups come out, as new matchups become meta. That is overall going to take like far more time to coach for potentially less reward than if you took a player like LIDER, who has always pushed his limits and has always tried to understand every matchup as well as he possibly can as his priority. I feel like it's going to take less time to teach someone like LIDER how to be smart around the map than it would to take someone like Dan and teach him how to play all of these matchups effectively. Something Dan said on the Elitists United episode that we did with him, I don't know if you were there, is that he was very surprised at how unpunishing a lot of the LEC tops are. When I was thinking about that, I was thinking he's not necessarily wrong. He was obviously talking about players that weren't on like the super top tier teams. He obviously respects Wonder and Alfari like really fucking well. He's talking about like Prophet and players like that, right? That aren't specifically punishing him the way that he expected to be punished. He actually has a lot of potential matchups player on player in the LEC that will just gift him the 2 item spikes that he wants. Like today, for example, Expect was obviously doing like a lot around the map, but he wasn't really punishing the Vladimir matchup. And in fact, at points, Vladimir was like 20 CS up, and then he was on double needless at a time when the game was still relatively even. And that's
but
like,
I mean, his mid laner is ignoring his calls. He's calling the roam mid.
No. I'm not denying that. I'm saying that like he is getting to these points where he can make such effective mid-game decisions a large amount of the time because his current actual issue, which is laning matchups, is not really being abused. And I've seen that shit get abused in the LFL, for example, by even players that he himself wouldn't necessarily say would punish him too much, like Shemek, for example, or Hirit. Hirit himself is not actually that strong of a top laner, but Hirit was strong enough of a top laner to prevent Dan being able to safely get to the point that he wants. And once he starts facing players like Alfari, Wonder, Karasha on a more consistent basis, you'll see the issues that I'm telling you that he has. And I think that those issues are harder to fix than LIDER's issue. I think that you can teach somebody how to side lane properly mid to late game. I would even point to Caps for that, because this isn't just a problem that Caps visually, optically had. This is a problem that FNATIC have discussed extensively that they had with Caps in his first 2 splits. And this is a problem that only ended up being solved when Youngblood came in and basically sat him down and was like, this is how you have to fucking do everything. This kind of thing is teachable to that kind of player, more so than a player who isn't necessarily a strong laner becoming like a good laner. And I'll let you go.
I followed Dan since he was on Millennium, where he would play Renekton, going full split push build and play.
Oh, I followed him since he was on OG, boy. No,
yeah, I know. But I
he
mean,
was on Wyndham main, boy.
Yeah, but I mean, at those times, I wasn't focusing on EU region, right? But since then, he's improved a lot. He's improved his laning matchups. He has champions which he will always be better on, which I won't go into because scouting. But he will have champions which he's always better on, and he will have champions which he's always more consistent on the lane. But the fact that his laning phase, which was one of his weakest points, has now improved so much, and the fact that he plays a specific style where you can see at some point the light bulb turned on, right? Like you can see Dan realized this about the game. He added it to his playstyle. 2018, 2019. You can see all of these step-by-step improvements, and this is the sign for me of a player that's extremely smart and has the potential to have a very long career in this industry. And LIDER, I don't see that. Like all that I see with LIDER is like he had the light bulb, and then he like threw the light bulb at the wall, and then it broke, and then
he just gets a new light bulb.
He gets a new light bulb.
Until it breaks, throws that against the wall as well. There you go.
He throws that one against the wall.
There you go.
And like there's sometimes I agree with you where I watch LIDER and I think this guy can be really, really good. And then 3 weeks later.
There are the times where you remember how he got to this point, which was basically by just forcing it until he could end up being that good.
Well,
and the times where it doesn't work, it's like garbage.
I hope you prove me wrong, and I hope Misfits show something very impressive because they're a good org and they deserve success. But all I'm saying is that nobody is talking about Dan.
So okay,
is the person that makes that system work.
I mean, so here's where I agree with you, and I really because I obviously Nemesis seemed for some reason, because I stated what is a fact, by the way, that Humanoid is better than Nemesis, started thinking that I didn't like him. But I obviously invited Dan on Elitists United for a reason. I think this guy does deserve a lot more optics. I think all of the strengths that you say he brings to the team are absolutely correct. But in terms of potential, it will always come down for me to a guy like LIDER who understands not just his matchups, but his mechanics in all of these team fight situations in a way that only really comes through intuition at the end of the day and through your own self-teaching. I feel like you can teach the map a lot better. But on the Dan point, Dan himself actually is hyper aware of his flaws. The first time I talked to him was at EU Masters, and I didn't expect somebody to be as aware of where they think they are weak, of where they are actually weak, being so well aligned with where they think they are weak. I'm fucked up all my words there, but you get my point. As Dan, and that actually gave me a lot more hope for him. This wasn't a guy who was deluding himself in that what he does right now will always work. He's not deluding himself in there, so he is going to be working on all of the flaws that I spoke about. Whereas with LIDER, obviously LIDER is a very, very hyper-confident person. He's somebody that I am more likely going to have to drag through the mud to make sure that he keeps expanding his champ pool, which he is doing, by the way. Talking about inside information, I know for a fact that there are multiple champions he can play. Hell, I can even point to the LFO where he was.
I don't even think it's a champion pool issue.
I know you're talking about the wider map thing, but the champ pool issue is the thing that most people will think of when I say that he has a very confident, cocky attitude where he doesn't think he needs to develop. I'm saying that the thing that everyone else will notice when it comes to attitude, that that itself has been broken, and you can break the map-based attitude as well. You can definitely get him to think about the mid to late game properly, but the systems by which you teach someone to think about the mid to late game properly, particularly in the wide map state that Mrs. Premier will just always default towards, because that's what Dan knows so fucking well, and that's what LIDER himself is going to be the best at on his preferred champion pool. That can be taught, and that can be taught much easier and to a much more consistent extent than matchups, which are eternally changing, patch for patch, meta changing, blah blah blah. A lot of this mid to late game stuff is static. The stuff that Dan Dan learned in 2017 is as relevant now when it comes to mid to late game as it was back then. He has learned more overall. No, this is true. No, he has learned more up to that point, but there's so many more static things you can learn to do with the mid to late game than there are to do with matchups. Yes, stuff like minion manipulation in matchups are a static thing, but they're not all of it. Unless you're LS, they're not all of it.
As somebody who works on a team that consistently goes to 35 minutes, late game has fundamentally changed over the last 2 to 3 years.
Oh, come on. No. You are the only team. No. You are the only point. Do not throw that on the game. And no one else has this fucking beat you, Peter. No.
You're right. You're justified to call me out on that. That was an unneeded.
Yeah.
But I think there is a wider point here, which is a wider point I'm trying to make, which is that weak side players tend not to get any credit.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that this is just symptomatic, basically, of what's going on with Misfits. It's going to happen on other teams in the future. It happened last year on FNATIC when Bippo was playing. Solid. Caps was getting all of the plaudits, especially at Worlds, right?
Yes.
Caps was not. I mean, he was good, but he was not insane at Worlds. But Whipper, who was playing weak side, was very, very good at that tournament.
Yes.
And I think that this is part of the problem that comes into analysis. We see these weak side players, they're role players, right? Like the analyst, whether on broadcast or armchair analysts, tend to see the guy who has the amazing stats, the guy who has 11 CS a minute, he gets all the pressure from mid, he ends the game 10-0, and they ignore the guy who's sitting on weak side. They just call him a role player, he was 40 CS down. But wait, this guy got ganked 6 times and he was only 40 CS down. That player is a fantastic player. He's more important to the team than the guy who got all of your jungle gamps, all of your roams mid, and the game 10-0. I mean, that's reality, and people don't value that. and we tend to just put aside these guys and we call them role players.
No. I agree with you. Like, I hate that kind of mentality, and I do think Dandan's being underrated. So I do just want to state, like, again for the record, the way that Dandan has been playing these kinds of wide map state and the decisions he has been making are decisions that not even like Wonder was doing at MSI, and that decisions that I have criticized other players for not doing. Like, Dandan's understanding of this stage of the game is extraordinarily good, and it's a huge benefit to Mrs. Premier. It should not go unsung.
Okay.
I mean, that's all I basically want to say. Sorry about my mic.
It's all right.
It's all good.
Can I ask you one question, Peter? One follow-up question. It's not to do with that specific topic, but if you're in the mood to talk about teams that aren't Splice, here's a question for you, because I think this is a tough question. I'd like to see Wade come down on it. If I asked you which of the 3 carries of G2, the laners, which of the 3 is the best right now, which would you pick? Just in line with the premise that you gave before, like, outlining, like, how the resources are divided. Caps?
I think Perks is the strong side player. I think Perks is... Kobe may not like me for this, but no, I think Perks is the best bot laner in the league. I don't think he's the best AD carry in the league. I think he's the best bot lane player in the league.
Okay.
I say AD carry, I mean somebody who's able to play an AD carry in the traditional sense that we think of as an AD carry, as like a team fighter or a mid laner in a 1-3-1
Sure.
or something like this. The standard, what has historically been as an AD carry. I think Perks offers a lot more. Offers a lot more to the team. He offers a lot more shot calling. He's very smart about how he plays the map. But he is not what we would call a traditional AD carry. But I think he's the best bot laner in the league.
Right.
But resources and Wonder's forced to play weak side. But you look at the Schalke game, I can't remember the exact statistics, but it was a 33-minute game. Perks has 370 CS or something, and Caps has 220, and Caps has played Talon for the entire game, and he's crushed the entire game on Talon and has no CS. And every single roam that he does, he gives up 2 minion waves.
Absolutely.
And if the play doesn't work, he's stuff. But every play works because...
I mean, they were doing this at Worlds, by the way. Like, this was something that so I don't want to just like seem like I'm shit talking him, but this is something that like blew LS's mind as well about it, was that he was also giving up waves on like Rise and stuff like this to make like early game things happen for his team at MSI, and I thought that was really fucking impactful. Like, I would agree with you on these kinds of terms.
That can read Caps, except Rookie. I think Rookie can read Caps really, really well because of he adjusts his playstyle in the early game specifically to counter Caps. But I think there's nobody else that I've seen so far that has been able to read this guy. I mean, this guy beat us on 1v, like he 1v9'd on Wukong last split. We're like 5k CS ahead and like outscaling hard, and then he just got a stupid flank on Wukong and won the game. And I mean, like, Caps, that's why I think Caps is the star G2. I think Wonder's a fantastic player. Like, if I was voting, so I don't get an MVP vote because Duke is the head coach of the LEC.
Sure.
I really like the Splice overall. If I was voting tomorrow, I would vote every single G2 player number 1, and I would vote Grabs as the...
Okay.
Oh my
Here's the thing,
God.
Peter. Thanks for coming on the show. Your mic was definitely mostly spending it on the weak side of the map there. You didn't put a lot of resources into that side, but you did an admirable job anyway. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Thorin, see you, man.
By the way, one thing that I will never stop, like it's literally one of my kinks in life, is I love when people sometimes when they don't know it's a coach or a player, and all the comments in Twitch chat are like, this guy's just wrong, he doesn't know anything about the game. Or even better, when they even know it's a pro player and a coach and they still say the same shit. Like, I fucking love it. It's my kink. Because you have to realise that's always the like fake straw man they go with me. Like, you don't even play the game on a high level. It's like, I mean, I've told everyone this a million times over. 99.9% of people watching this show right now, more than that, 99.999, probably about 6 nines recurring, will never in their life for 1 second be better at League of Legends than LS. So by your own logic, you can now never counter any of his opinions. That would be a ridiculous premise to have, of course, but I didn't create that ridiculous standard. So I don't know why anyone would go with that angle. That's why you always know the real hater when they try to imply that LS actually isn't even vaguely good at the game. It's like, mate, that's the one thing his whole fucking personality is based on. You dumb cunt. Like, obviously he is.
For me, it would be like, why would it matter? Like, for example, you Thorin, like you go out there and you do just straight up say, like, I don't know anything about the game, but obviously you have an opinion on this stuff because, like, why the fuck are you coming into a call-in show where the premise of it is that we're going to get like random people on to talk with like Thorin and me about the game, and they'd be like, why are you guys talking about the game? Ha! How enlightened I am with my amazing point that I've made. Like, it just makes no sense to me why you'd even entertain that as an issue. Why the fuck is LS talking about League of Legends? All he fucking does is talk about it every goddamn day, and that's what the vast majority of his audience is there to listen about. Why would he do that? Ha! See, I bet no one's brought up this point before. It makes no sense. Why would you even entertain that argument at all? It makes no fucking sense.
A lot of dumb people in the world, mate. I always tell people this. You would think, right? This is the naive optimism of the world. People would think, well, the more you get to know people, the more you travel, it'll open your mind and you'll realize that people are actually like very the same and good. No, it's the other way around. The more you travel, the more you get to know people, the more you're just eternally disappointed and go, they're all cunts, just fuck them all. Like, there's about 7 people I've ever met that were I'd even want in a room for more than 5 minutes.
Thorin, if they're all cunts, haven't you just noticed how they're all the same?
Oh, they are in a way, mate. Yeah, they are. No, the good thing is, like, luckily I just build it back into my own narcissism and go, well, as long as they're all cunts, I'll probably always succeed, won't I? So fuck it, just keep going in it. My actual mission is to be the fucking one-eyed man who is the king of the blind. That's, you know, like, I'm not trying to get everyone specs. No, stay blind, motherfuckers. I'll just be out here with my one working eye.
Here's what you've done, Fun. Everyone is a cunt, but you're the only guy that decided to make that his fucking brand, you know? And now no one can touch you on that. Now
people think
like,
that's a joke, mate. I always tell people, no, you don't swim against the tide, do you? Like, go with the stream. I just said, fuck it. I already know the way this one's going. I am a cunt, so fuck it, may as well just fucking ride that horse. It got me here, didn't it?
Yeah. No
point trying to switch horses midstream. Come on in, like, what am I going to do? Come on in, like, a fucking suit, be like, I apologise to Reckless for everything I've said. No, like, it's not going to, it wouldn't even work anyway, would it? Just destroy the whole brand, like.
My God.
Right, okay, so Yang, what was your topic, mate?
I was well, this was before they announced they were going to bring Mickey in, but I thought XL was going to be a good team with the summer split, based on what I saw during the spring split, toward the end.
Okay, but okay, just to clarify, you thought they would be a surprise even after they announced their roster?
No, because at first I thought, okay, initially I thought, okay, this team, during the spring split, I thought, alright, this team have a lot of young pieces that I thought they could potentially be really good during the summer. Then they announced Mickey, and I still thought, you know what, the bot lane's still really good, so I thought they would still be fine. But then they did the whole thing in Hajan.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is you're not really saying anything that isn't necessarily contentious. I actually thought that you thought that the new roster of Misfits was going to be, like, insane. I think it's pretty well documented at this point that nobody on the face of planet Earth, except for somehow XL's own staff, thought that, like, these changes were actually going to be good. So I would agree with you on that, in which case there isn't too much of a discussion to be had except for just asking the question why over and over again, which many people have asked. I feel really bad for everybody there. I actually think that the way that XL played today showed that there are certain teams that play certain styles that they are still stylistically going to just beat. They were very close to beating, like, FNATIC when FNATIC was on their win streak, for example. I think honestly it comes down to jungle difference. Like, the contentious point I wanted to say that may be controversial earlier is that I think the reason why Misfits won versus FNATIC, but not versus XL, is because when it comes to, like, a wide 1-3-1 map state, jungle matchup is so important, not just because you need to get all of your solo lanes ahead to play out this, like, multi-split push stuff, but also because once you hit mid to late game, if your mid section, including your jungler, doesn't actually work properly relative to all 3 lanes, then you're really fucked. So a 1-3-1 is always going to be decided by which team has the better jungler. So by that kind of model, it's not a surprise to me personally that that Misfits beat Fnatic, where it's Kire versus Broxer, and I am correct about Broxer and you are not. And then they lost to Cajal. It doesn't surprise me once I start putting it in those terms. And I think that when they have players like Cajal on the team, and obviously their bot lane was actually winning against basically every bot lane they've played against except for G2, where G2 were the only team that actually was like 2v2 killing them straight up. Like I think that team had a lot of potential, and they threw it all away for literally no reason. Only an American could think that that was a fucking good idea, because that's how they swing in North America. But they also have no ambition in North America, so it makes sense in that regard as well. But I don't really have anything else to add other than that and what I've already said before to this particular topic. So
actually, do you think they should get Veteran for next year and get rid of Mickey?
I mean, I don't think they have to get rid of Special. But Febiven is someone that like a lot of teams would be upgraded by, and XL is another team that would be upgraded by putting Febiven in, yeah. Like I think they could go for that. I wouldn't have an issue with it.
Alright. Right, I got that fed.
Okay, fair enough. That was a quick one. Cheers, mate.
Yep. Right. Cheers. We'll never learn how to fix Europe. Europe's just...
What's great is, like, when you tried to, like, explain the nuance of your controversial statement, you are aware. Listen, do your best anyway, but it will never work. The point is, listen, this was solved years ago, and I'll look it up now so I can tell you the exact quote. So when you hear the exact quote, it is so perfect. Any analyst knows this is an amazing quote.
Okay.
I need to get the exact quote for you.
I'm ready. I'm ready to just randomly disagree with it, but I'm ready.
This is how it works when you talk on shows. It doesn't matter how much nuance you give. It doesn't matter how you set the example up. It doesn't matter how many disclaimers you give. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter even if you explicitly say, I am not saying X. They will say you are saying X if that's the best. So when you said all of that there, I can tell you what the translation is to an idiot's mind, is they will just hear... XL is better than FNATIC. They just heard that. So here's the quote. And because by the way, if you listen to that episode I did with Loco and Kelsey, she went out of her way to explain her actual grading of the players, and people still took it as, so you're saying Caedrel's just objectively a better jungler than Bloxer. It's like, definitely not what I said. But here's the quote, okay? The quote is by the legendary British, elite state, like a fucking philosopher, Bertrand Russell, right? And it just says... A stupid man's report of what a clever man says can never be accurate because he unconsciously translates what he hears into something he can understand.
Yes.
If you know what that means, it like solves 99% of debates that are on the internet. It's like the whole thing is that you didn't say it, but the person did hear that, but that's because that's how their brain had to hear it. Otherwise, it'd just be like noise to them. They would have no way of getting into it. So in a sad way, this is the reason why even idiots could be actually contributing something to the discussion. If they just explained how they got to that point in time, if they didn't just take it that like they really know what you said. Because them thinking they knew what you said is what causes all the problem, unfortunately, because that's where the disconnect is.
People wonder why, or I've seen like a big complaint people have of me, and it's still not necessarily a bad complaint. Like I do still struggle with this, and I do try to like tone it down. Is that I say like 5 million sentences in something that could be done in like 3 or 4 sentences, right? But the reason I'm doing that is that I actually am fully aware of that quote that you just said. And my solution to that is to raise the understanding of the people that I'm talking to. Like, I don't want you to come off of my stream with just the opinion that like Europe is better than Korea, or that European mids are good, or that Caps is really good, or that Jankos is an intuitive jungler, whatever the fuck that means, or that Splice I've only had a good early game plan like twice. I want you to come out with the opinion. I want you to come out with the reasoning behind it, and I want you to be able to apply that reasoning to your own logic. Like that's my big objective, because it's pointless me just straight up saying Misfits won because Misfits won versus Fnatic because they had the better jungler, but then lost to XL because XL had the better jungler. Because yeah, you're right. Most people are just going to be that like, wait a minute, you just say XL is better than Fnatic. This means XL will beat Fnatic because they have the better jungler, right? Like that's just what most people hear. Yeah.
Yeah. What happened is when Fnatic beats XL, this aged well, veteran.
Yes. Yes.
This aged well. It's like my point still applies.
This is why I have to say like 3 fucking paragraphs, because I am aware. I mean, come on, guys. You can see the title of the show. I am fully aware that my understanding of the game is above yours, leagues above yours. So I'm trying to get you through those fucking leagues, and those leagues aren't like a sentence apart. I'm like 5 fucking paragraphs away from you every time, and I'll gladly take you through those paragraphs. That's what you get on my stream. That's what you give me on my shows. That's my objective, because I'm fully aware of how much more beyond you I am. So I have to break it down.
I can tell you though, Veteran, it won't matter, because here's the key thing to realise on this state, right? You know, there's a famous thing people say. So there's people who are like, I like Thorin's content, but I think on Twitter he is an asshole. What you've just explained is exactly the same principle. Yes, when I say my whole opinion in one sentence, obviously it doesn't have a lot of nuance, does it? How the fuck could it? When I go on a show and give the same opinion, but I give all the explanation and set the whole point up, give an example, give a disclaimer, tell you what I'm not saying. Yeah, at that point, it seems very reasonable, doesn't it? Has anyone figured out yet that this is the fucking medium? I've always said this. It'll apply forever, by the way. Show me the person who is very outspoken with their opinions, including controversial opinions about any game, League of Legends, CSGO, does it all on Twitter, yet is not considered an asshole. Show me that person. They don't exist. Because anyone they're going to pick, Veteran, like who they think it does it point to, is you'll just find they don't ever almost give any opinions. That's it. They everyone will think I'm flaming him, but I'll say it again. There's a reason why when Papa Smithy gives his opinion, he's very careful on how he crafts it when he's on Twitter. He doesn't just put out a hot take. If he did, he'd quickly find himself in the same boat we're all in. Because there'd be some guy out there who wouldn't be able to handle it.
It's not possible to be really big on Twitter, not at least have some people calling him an arsehole. Because the only way that you can actually get big on social media, especially in this day and age, is by having an opinion. So if you are big, I'm going to assume you have an opinion. And if you have an opinion, there is a dissenting opinion. And therefore, there will be people of said dissenting opinion who will eventually just get fed up that you do not agree with their dissenting opinion. The only way to really get around this is to do stuff like, honestly, the only reason Papa Smithy hasn't been called like an arsehole by people is because he doesn't stream anywhere near as much as other people do. He doesn't throw out as many opinions about other regions as like other people do.
He crafts his persona. He does a very, very good job with it as well.
I just think I feel like he can craft his persona as much as he wants. If he was to throw his opinion out there more and more and more, then eventually there will be people who will just call him an arsehole as well because they have the dissenting opinion.
Oh,
he never changed it, but it's never been allowed to be stagnant. Anyway, I can add Scoundrel now.
Sure.
So there you go. And now Tent has gotten back to me, so we can still like go for the 3-piece. So, but I'll drag him on obviously after Scoundrel tells us how it was.
Tell them to click on this group. And how many people in this fucking community can't work out a basic app?
Okay, like, I'm not going to lie.
Like fucking grandma can come on here and show you a dog, but y'all can't get the fucking app to work. Peter Dunn was using like a fucking Heinz can of beans with a string between it, trying to put it next to my window or something. Like fucking hell. All right, can you hear us now? We'll just
It's funny that you were talking about Twitter just before I came on, because I know me and Thorin had a little thing in December, which, by the way, Thorin, I think you were completely right to call me out about, by the way. I think, I'm fully accepting of the opinion that you put out that you can't judge someone by what they talk about on Twitter because of the medium, and you can't judge someone by the words they use, which is kind of what, ended up happening.
We squashed all that. It's all right.
We squashed that. I sent you a Facebook DM. We were all good.
Yeah, no problems at all. Very reasonable person. People don't know that. It's kind of, don't buy the hype.
No. But I think in hindsight, or when I looked at the way you presented it, I had said something. What I had said maybe not have been bad, but you took it out of context with the words, and then it looks bad.
I was just giving you an example, mate. Like anyone, this is why, by the way, we're not going to get into a whole thing here, but one of the reasons why identity politics isn't good for anyone is because it's a race to the bottom. Okay. It's just literally everyone trying to wreck everyone in the most petty way, half the time in an ungenerous and disingenuous way, sometimes even lying. And the problem with that is, like, even if I use it to wreck someone else, what do I get at the end? It's like I get the medal of being an idiot as well. Like, we're all just idiots if we do that. So, like, to me, it's just no way to run a society. You can't even have any kind of meaningful discussion. So the sooner we all just quit doing that, the sooner we can all just have a cool community,
Yeah, and I think I kind of came round to the opinion after that episode, and I'm glad you were cool about it. I'm glad we managed to sort it out, but I think we can put that behind me.
That's all right, mate. So anyway, you just came in, and if people didn't see, they brought you in a similar fashion to last split. They brought in Machine, and Frankie came in to do some of the interviews. So the LEC's been experimenting a little bit. I've even heard, won't say any information, that there'll be some other interesting guests coming up in the future that they've got lined up. So How was this first week then? Because obviously one of the interesting changes to LEC is in the past, every single week would be shocks and quick shot and the same exact cast of people. But now, due to actually the freelance status of some of these people, sometimes there's a chance to mix it up a bit. So how did you suddenly end up coming into this equation, and what's it like to host the LEC?
I think, I got contacted by Quickshot about 2 months ago, just off the back of European Masters. They basically, he sent me a message saying, hey, dude, we thought you were a good desk host at European Masters. Would you like to come and give the LEC a shot? And obviously, me being a freelance guy who doesn't really get many opportunities in League outside of the European Masters, I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, of course. Like that's an amazing opportunity. And yeah, it kind of, we didn't organize it for ages, and it very, very quickly turned around like, oh yeah, you come in this next week. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I ended up coming out like that. It was a pretty quick process. Riot were really good about it. And I think, just on the topic of adding freelancers to the show, I think it's actually been beneficial. I loved that week that we had with Frankie and Machine. I think it added a whole new style to the show, and I think that's one reason I think one of the LEC broadcasts is the best League of Legends broadcast out there right now, because I think they've just been so good with the way they have tried to change the flavor of the content.
We'll ignore the obvious conflict of interest that you did just get hired as a result of them bringing in freelancers. But yes, listen, that goes without saying. We understand that. We understand that. Okay.
Yeah. And I think even from a genuine perspective, even beyond the conflict of interest, I really, really enjoyed being part of the show. And I genuinely think they've stepped up massively over this rebranding process that they've had this year. I think it's been amazing. For me, this, apart from IEM Katowice, which I did like 2017, this was the biggest league event I've ever done. Probably the biggest event I've ever done as a desk host. So coming into it, I was definitely very nervous. As someone who's worked freelance now for 5 years, and I'm sure Thorin, you can appreciate as someone who's been a broadcaster in the freelance market, it can be quite difficult, like to keep work, especially before Riot were open to use, especially in League of Legends, before Riot were open to using freelancers, it can be quite difficult to keep work. So with League of Legends, I had been a bit few and far between over the last year. So it was a bit nervy because I came in as being someone who used to be massively involved with League, but over the last year had to branch out to like other games, like the likes of mobile. I mean, I was a mobile game commentator like Vainglory for a very long time, So I had to branch out quite massively. So it was quite a daunting task to come in and just say, hey, you're hosting the LEC, by the way. And also, I don't know if you've watched the start of the show in the LEC, Ready Check. It's quite a daunting segment to be thrown in at the deep end because it's 30 minutes of segmented content. That you have to just keep up discussion.
Sure.
You have to just keep up discussion for 30 minutes. And I'm also a guy who's never really done standing segments. Like I've always just been used to being on a desk. And so standing segments add like a whole new dynamic, which was really weird. And plus Riot do put a lot of effort into scripting things. And there's all of these teleprompter based sections that I've never used. And they put tons of work into story and graphics that as the host, you basically have to be, and I know you'll know this, Thorin, you have to be super and hyper aware of everything that's coming your way. And for me, I haven't done too much hosting work before this, apart from European Masters. That was a bit of a challenge for me to overcome. So I think you could definitely tell I was nervous on the first day, but I think I kind of settled into it over the first and second.
Like one thing I would say about that, if people want some like behind the scenes info, like you alluded to there, the difference is one of the reasons actually why in my game CS:GO, some of the best talent are basically revered in the esports industry is we don't have a teleprompter, we don't have a scripted segment, we don't have any. If someone tells us in Machine's ear when I'm doing ESL Cologne with him, 2.5 minutes to fill, actually, the machine isn't ready. He must seamlessly transition to a topic that doesn't last 5 minutes, but could end in 30 seconds, and then we must discuss it for literally a variable period of time while making it seem like this was a real thing we wanted to talk about anyway. But at any moment, if he tells me, go to the game now, I have to end my sentence in 4 seconds. So, like, that, if anyone thinks that's easy, good luck. Like, there's a reason why the people who do it and are really good at it are really fucking good and get mad plaudits. So that's one area where I know everyone makes fun of the Riot thing because they thought scripted meant like someone literally comes like The Simpsons and gives Freak his script. Like, oh, cool. Nice joke in the opening segment. Like, no, they mean scripted as in like, we're going to go from this topic to this topic and this is going to last roughly 5 minutes and then hit this cue here. But the point is, while that makes it easier, by the way, for the talent, like they know what cue they're coming in on, as the host, that makes it actually in a different way harder. Like it's harder for Machine on the fly there, but in some ways it'd be easier for him if it was scripted. So it's a different skill set, certainly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the script writer that is at Riot is really good. I had a meeting with him this week, and he was like, what do you want written for you? And I was like, I just want intros and outros written for me, because they're the bits that I screw up the most. So if I could just have those written for me so that I could look at the teleprompter and do an intro and an outro without fluffing my words 10,000 times, that'd be sick. And then basically I just get bullet points for like the conversation topics, because we have like planned conversation topics. So you get bullet points thrown through the teleprompter, and then it's up to you to phrase the question. And obviously then you have that ad-lib bounce between your analysts, which works very naturally. But the timings are pretty tight. I think something that you'll know, Thorin, like from doing ESL and those type of events, that actually you can be quite flexible with your analyst desk time. Like often the broadcast will wait on you a lot of times. It's not like that with the LEC. There's specific times that you need to hit, specific for instance, ready check is half an hour. That's what you get. It's no more.
I can tell you part of the reason why as well will be that because of all the broadcasting they're doing around the world in like different other areas and stuff, you know. So you have to hit the mark. Basically, it's equivalent to when I had the same problem happen where when I did television to do E-League, they told you there like there will be no running over the time. Like if I tell you to go to the game, you will go to the game now. Like there will be no like finish your point.
Yeah.
Like if I hit that hard, you're out. You have to be out on that.
It's really interesting you mentioned E-League, because I guess they're like more TV orientated. And because I've worked with, you've probably heard of Jinx TV. It's like a smaller TV studio in London. They have similar. They give you hard counts, and I'd never been used to a hard count before. You get the producer in your ear going 10, 9, 8, 7. You're like, I have to finish my sentence and make it sound professional. Well, this guy is like spamming numbers in my ear, and it's really difficult. But I something that I've grown more used to, like as kind of doing more hosting work over the last years, and. But it was really, really nice to be able to. I never thought I was going to make it to the LEC. Like I just never thought it was going to happen.
Technically, you've only made it for 1 week so far, so like don't get ahead of yourself. But you've done all right. You got your foot in the door.
No, I am here next week as well. I'm doing 2 weeks.
There we go. Right.
Nice. Yeah. So I'm doing. I'll be there with the week the Papa's there as well, which is next week.
Well, give my love.
I will do. But for me, like I never even thought I'd get that foot in the door opportunity, because as a freelancer in League, there was a point, even just previous to this January, January 2019, there was as a point with a freelancer, if you weren't prepared to pack up and move your life to Berlin, you just weren't getting on the broadcast.
Sure.
And I never thought that I was going to be able to do that. Just never, because I literally live and have a family in Ipswich in the UK, so there was no way I was moving.
I'd say even another angle that has always made the league scene so trying for me is one of the most tried and tested proven ways to get to whichever your chosen region is to go to a region you don't want to do work in and give up your whole life and maybe go and do the OCE broadcast or the fucking Brazilian broadcast. And the point is, you gamble in everything, but that might eventually, if you get good enough, at least then you've got the resume, right? But then that's a pretty big gamble to have to give up if you want just to get on a European broadcast, for example, It's pretty hard, the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it's a weird process going from an amateur lower level caster trying to make your way to the big leagues, because those opportunities, if you look at the LPL broadcasts, apart from Raz and
Hysterics, I think is the other guy who does it at the moment. Hysterics Cast, I think is his name.
Yeah, there's the analyst. I can never remember his name.
Clement.
Clement. Yeah, Clement.
There you go.
Apart from those guys, they've actually got a fairly amateur caster roster on the LPL. They've brought a lot of new people. I've worked with Blood Penguin, the Irish guy that's literally just joined. He's done a lot of casting over the years, but you would never really consider him more than just semi-professional at best.
Yes.
I think his biggest gig to date was the European Masters that's just gone.
Was he the one who did the European Masters that Forgiven and Froggen won?
No, that was Gosu and Celtic.
Because that was an Irish guy as well, right?
Yes, we had two.
That guy was pretty good, actually. I forget, what was his alias? Celtic something.
Celtic Tiger, yes.
I actually thought he was good when I heard him. He had a good voice.
Yeah, he's good. And he reminds me of you, actually, Thorin. He's not afraid to say it how it is. He'll just go out and say, he'll just be like, this was shit. And these guys were shit, and I think that very few people in the league scene. And if you watched, I don't know if Veteran probably can chime in here. If you listen to Euphoria this week, there was a lot of talk about the weight that pro players have on casters and the opinion of the the dynamic between how casters can develop pro player brands, but just how much so that pro players can affect caster brands. And Frost was talking about it quite a lot. I thought that was a really interesting discussion. And it's the same with Reddit. You know, Reddit has that kind of opinion and people pay a lot of attention to Reddit. So yeah, well, I literally forgot where I was going with this point.
It's all right. That's an interesting point in itself.
But it's interesting that Celtic, for instance, you were mentioning, he's someone that the pro players really like. So I helped him build his brand around the European Masters. Okay. But yeah, I think I was going to ask Veteran to weigh in on this, like on what he thinks about this dynamic that has kind of opened up with pro players and the casters, and then kind of like.
Yeah, because here's the thing, Veteran.
Discussion about it.
Yeah.
The interesting part about it is that they put in the other side, because everyone knows the first one, because every player's bloody got his handkerchief out, crying his eyes out on the street corner every time they lose. Like, oh, these casters, these evil casters are making narratives. P.S. If I make one tweet, I will ruin a cunt's credibility for his life. Let's see if I get onto it. Like, and no one mentions the other side to it, which is that any pro player can just body the fuck out of some newer analyst or caster or whatever. Like, you could easily get maligned, and if the right player says it, it's going to be hard to turn that narrative around. So what do you think on both sides of this, Veteran? Where are you coming down?
I mean, okay, so where I come down on is that there are two sides to this. One for me is like the responsibility angle, and the other for me is like the practical angle. From a practical perspective, you casters, you as a host scoundrel are going to be there game to game, right? So just from the amount of time that you're going to have relative to everyone else, and the fact that no game really occurs in isolation, like a Fnatic versus Misfits game says a lot about Fnatic's matchup versus other teams, and a Misfits versus Fnatic game says a lot about Misfits matchup versus other teams, right? You guys get to weave that narrative game to game as it happens. You are the first point of contact no matter what. And then on the responsibility angle, players themselves aren't experts in the LEC. Players themselves will never be able to tell you like exactly how Misfits behaves, even if they're going to play against them next week, because that's not their job. Their job is to be able to play Sylas in every fucking role and make sure that their team can play it in every fucking role, being able to play it in their role. You can first pick Sylas right now, by the way, guys. And as a result, they're not going to have the knowledge to be able to challenge, theoretically, your analysts whose only responsibility is literally just to weave this fucking narrative, right? As a result, from both a practical and a responsibility angle, I see the player at a disadvantage at almost all points when it comes to the narrative itself, because even if a player tries to like bludgeon your take on the narrative in like one regard, you're going to be able to reinforce like 5 times in a day in a way that they're not going to be able to in an audience that is going to be watching while they are obviously doing their fucking job, that your side is the correct one if you wanted to. Like, there's nothing that really stops you guys from doing that. I see it actually severely weighted away from players in that regard. And when it comes to like the Reddit narrative, and the whether or not like Reddit has like a lot of power over you guys and all this kind of deal, the way that I put it, because I actually talked to like one guy on your cast recently about this, is that these guys don't know what's correct until you tell them. They literally don't know what's correct until you tell them. There's no real dissenting opinion. Like, me and Thorin reach maybe like 15 to 20k people with every episode of Elitists United. Your concurrence every day blow us out the fucking water. There's no real, like, you guys get to dictate what is and isn't essentially a fact at this point with regards to League of Legends. It's very difficult for like a significant proportion of any sort of like Reddit community, although they are basically the entire fucking effective League community, let's be real, or even like Twitch chat or the YouTube community, to really make a dent on the power that you guys have in terms of narratives. I really don't think your analysts should like worry themselves about these guys' opinions, because you guys are going to get to reinforce whatever opinion you want every single day that you do this cast. It's very, very difficult for these guys. Like, these guys now are only being like, maybe Vedius was being too harsh on Broxer, because you guys have been the ones reinforcing that Broxer is like an MVP player day in, day out, which has been the bane of my existence, by the way. That's you guys are essentially at war with your past selves, if anything. Most of the narratives that are on Reddit are sourced from you guys. And sometimes you'll have them like take sides in terms of, obviously, different analysts on the cast have different opinions. And obviously a Fnatic fan will prefer the opinion that that they want over like the opinion that maybe Vedius is giving more recently. So maybe you'll see people who prefer like Ender's side on the whole thing. But very rarely do I think that like these Redditors are going to be able to like have any sort of dent on the narrative you guys are saying, or even necessarily in your career unless you let them, just because I really don't think these guys know what is and isn't a correct opinion until you tell them. And who else is really going to? Like Riot have taken steps to control basically the entirety of a high-level European League of Legends for a reason, and this is a very, very big one of those, and it is an effective reason. I can tell you that for a fact as someone who's working on the outside. Like, it's you guys are the prevailing narrative and always will be. I'm not ever going to be able to touch that because you guys, no one can own football, right? Like FIFA obviously like goes like a huge way to trying to do so, but no one can really like own football. Like any sort of company can kind of come in and step in. FIFA ended up with a de facto monopoly. You guys were able to do like straight up from day one because you own League of Legends. No one else owns League of Legends. Obviously, you're a freelancer, so when I'm saying you guys, I'm not directly addressing you, but you get my point.
The broadcast in general, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You have any
It's really
thoughts on that,
interesting.
Scandal?
Well, I just think it's interesting because I want to tie that back into the guest that you had on earlier. He talked about LIDER. Peter Dunn. Peter Dunn was talking about how we talked about LIDER. And it's interesting that he said that, highlighting LIDER is the wrong person to highlight. And in a way, I think that's an interesting topic to talk about because at its core, the LEC is an entertainment broadcast. If we were to go the full veteran route and we were to be like, let's analyze everything to the absolute extremes, like it would be no offense, veteran, but you would find it hella interesting. But your average viewer is going to find it boring. Like realistically, your average viewer is going to find it fairly boring.
Sure.
So when we bring up a big stat of LIDER with his insane KDA, that's because the KDA is the simplest thing for the average viewer to understand.
I'll give you a quick digression here, right? Basically, there's a famous problem that happens in sports where when you have like a traditional way of categorizing people, so this applies to League of Legends with AD carry. Is there such a role as AD carry? Is it called bot laner now, right? The same thing happens in basketball, right? You have these 5 positions, and what happens is the problem is, what if you have a player who can sort of switch between 2 positions at will, or even worse, in one team, maybe I just don't actually have a player who plays that position. I have 2 players who play one position, right? What you say to people is this: the whole point of the positions is not to actually analyze the player. It's to start to be able to analyze the player. The position is to explain to the layman the most basic principle of the game. Then we analyze after that. So I kind of agree with you. Like, here's the thing. Even though everyone in the world who's an analyst can tell you like KDA is a very, very meaningless stat generally. Basically, you need an expert to explain what it even means. Like, you'd have to explain what champion they played, what their team system is, when the game point was won. Every factor you need to explain more things than you would if you didn't have the KDI stat. But it gives you, first of all, a place to start the discussion. And then secondly, it's something like you say that anyone can understand the basics of. Like, they at least can get, if this number's high, there's got to be something to discuss, right? If it's low, it's got to be something to discuss. The problem only is if people think you can't go beyond that.
It's interesting as well because you link that back to how we got to having LIDER with a full. Like, I'm going to put it in this context. We had LIDER with a full screen graphic. When we mean full screen graphic, it means we literally put LIDER on a big screen behind us, and we talked about how awesome he was. Right?
Sure.
Let's take you through the process how we got there. LIDER had a game where he got the most solo kills, tied with Forbidden in LEC EU LCS history. Right? Doesn't matter how he got to that position. Doesn't matter how many resources he took to acquire that. Sure. What the viewers saw was LIDER mechanically shitting on kids. You know, that's basically what the viewers saw, right? So when you come out of that game, what's the biggest thing the viewer's going to remember? Is it going to be the fact that LIDER required Hiva and Kirei to invest that many resources into him? Or is it the fact that LIDER came out and got 7 solo kills on Akali and in some team fights played like a mechanical god? Because that is kind of what LIDER's brand is. He's just this mechanical god, right? So when we come in to use a full screen graphic, and we want to build upon the one thing that the viewers are very likely to have remembered, you go in with the KDA and you show a highlight package of LIDER popping off with 7 kills, 7 solo kills, being, the mechanical assassin player that he is. And then if your analysts want to break that down or want to add anything to the flavor, then they can do. On the flip side, the positive is that it builds a narrative that actually the average viewer is going to follow LIDER into the next game, and if he has the same performance, it builds that further brand for him. He didn't have that same performance, obviously, but the graphic and the narrative is built there so that the average viewer, just like Thorin said, the one who wouldn't be able to discern much more from that basic KDA value, would then see if LIDER did the same thing. They'd be like, damn, I really want to follow this guy and I follow this guy's brand. So what we really try to do in that situation is build that little small brand around LIDER that he could then capitalize on.
You have to be able to communicate to all levels of people watching, basically. There has to be something for the guy who knows nothing. Like, he has to be able to follow on the most basic level. Then, if you're lucky, hopefully you have an expert like VDS who gives his own take, and he gives some insight that maybe goes over that guy's head. He's still focused on the KDA, but the other guy enjoys, who's a bit more into the game. And then the big problem is people like Veteran aren't the target audience in any context. They're almost explicitly not. So if there's 20 people like Veteran, who some of them might be Redditors who are just like, this is completely wrong. It's like, it doesn't matter, mate. It ain't for you. This show isn't for you. Like, if you join in, cool.
No. Okay, I have to.
Come on then.
This is just so easy. I don't disagree with all of the premises that you have said in terms of like that. This is how you entertain them. This is obviously the surface level thing that they understand. I understand all of that. And then my obvious gripe is that I then have to try to combat these kinds of narratives, etc.
Yeah, sucks for you. There has to be casualties in every war.
Wait, 2 points. Okay, number one, I don't necessarily think that you have to give the analysis. Like Thorin was saying before, there are obviously always going to be people who think that if I say better jungler is winning versus misfits, then people might try to take transitive properties, say that therefore Excel should beat FNATIC. I think you have to have that discussion. I think you can build a narrative based upon an actual analysis of the game, but build a simple narrative out of that. You have to explain every single nuance. But the second point is that, yeah, I agree with you that it is easier to just go with the surface level entertaining stuff. But that's what makes stuff like the stuff at the end of Euphoria so mind-blowing to me. Why would you complain about having an uneducated audience when you're then going to come on this cast and spend so long giving me reasons not to educate them? What's the disconnect there? I have no idea why people like Vedius or people who are on the cast care that the audience obviously has incorrect opinions with regards to their specific narratives, when you guys are intentionally not educating them because it's easier, not just easier not to do so, but more beneficial for your numbers not to do so. You're fully aware you're doing this, so then why would you complain about the results of what you're doing? But again,
wait a minute, you've gone too far there.
Simple.
Wait a minute, Veteran. 100%. You coloured that way too far. There's no universe in which Vedius is going right. I'd love to give actually some interesting thoughts tonight. No, Vedius, you know the rule. You have 3 words to say about this team. Make them snappy. Second word has to pop and hit Reddit. No one's going that far. The point is, his point earlier is think about every moment that fans say they hate on my shows, Veteran. It's when you and fucking Loco are arguing. It's when Loco and LS is arguing. It's when Kelsey Moles is going 17 minutes into a VOD match by. No one wants to hear that. Is the point, even though for pure analysis that would be the best. No, but that would be the best for pure analysis. His point is just that
would be the best for pure analysis.
Yeah, they have the very limited angle as to which they can take on.
I'm not saying give pure analysis. I'm saying give the correct opinion. You don't have to dress it up in terms of we need to now cut to a 30-minute segment while you explain exactly why Broxer isn't specifically the better jungler. You can literally just say FNATIC's early game plan is too stagnant. It's obviously going to get figured out eventually. That doesn't take that many words. Just because you're not doing hardcore analysis like me and Kelsey and all that lot do on our shows doesn't mean that the narrative has to be the way it is just because KDA is a stat everyone understands. KDA is only a stat. Wait, KDA is only a stat that everyone puts high value in because you guys put high value in it. If you guys stop talking about KDA, everyone else would stop talking about KDA as well. It would not take very long.
I don't buy that. Veteran, I'm only half with you on that one. Listen, I agree.
One broadcast for
listen,
literally only.
I agree, Veteran. They have the most potential to influence the community. But listen, I'll give you the analogy right now. They're not... they are King Canute, mate. They can't literally go out and go, turn back, Tide, and have the whole ocean turn back. That won't work. You're giving them too much power here, mate. They're not fucking gods who just disseminate their opinion. If they go on the show tomorrow, Veteran, and they give the opinion every episode for the next 7 episodes that FNATIC is actually all bombs and they're only succeeding because of the coaching staff, it won't make everyone think Reckless sucks, mate. That won't work. You will never turn the steamboat like
Reckless
that.
Doesn't suck. But if Vedius gives the opinion for multiple episodes words that Brox's pathing is not good. Like, if he does that for one more weekend, yes, I absolutely guarantee you will go onto the Reddit thread.
I think best case scenario will be 50-50. I think if anything, there'll just be hate threads that say Vidius is biased against Brox.
Right, so he's done 1 week, he does next week, and then he does... Okay, so if the week after next week, we see people on Reddit threads doing it, considering that he stays on this, I'll gladly bet you 100 quid right now that we will start seeing most upvoted stuff on the Reddit thread, on FNATIC threads, to be that Brox's pathing is actually an issue. I'll actually make like 100 quid bet with you right now about that.
I mean, that's literally the most like unfalsifiable bet ever. Because like, what would the metric be? Like, how many threads are we talking?
How would you have to look at the top? We just have the basically not next weekend, but the weekend after, the FNATIC match thread. The FNATIC match thread.
Oh, I see. The comments that get to the top.
Yeah, the comments that get to the top will now start tackling Broxer. That's what I'm saying. That they'll start tackling Broxer if he keeps up the Broxer thing. Because I've already, like, obviously not. It's not like taken over already. But I'm already still seeing at like 4th, 5th, like people will be talking about Broxer. Obviously, then you'll have somebody who's right at the top saying, "Wow, Broxer really needs to hard carry this team." But you're seeing it seep in, and it's only been 1 weekend. Like, I'm very sure that if we give it the next weekend, it will start doing like actual stuff. So the weekend after that, I'm pretty sure on the Reddit threads, like it will happen. Yeah, I think the broadcast does have this. I understand why you wouldn't like to see it that way, or why you don't see it that way, because you've obviously been here for 15 years. This kind of monopoly on a narrative, absolutely unprecedented. It's completely unprecedented.
Are you talking to me right now, by the way?
Like this in my fucking life, huh?
Are you talking to me right now?
Yeah. Like, no one's ever done like an actual like.
Are you out your motherfucking mind? Do you not remember like episode 2 of this show, the one where I told you I want a broadcast that is like all the real shit, and you were like, "No, Thorin, you've got to have a pleb broadcast like this that appeals to everyone. That will keep the game out." That was literally your side.
Riot will not do that. I said that Riot will not do that because they will lose viewers.
No, but you agreed that. Yeah, exactly. You said that the viewer base will be better with this style of broadcast. I argued against you, mate.
The viewer base will be larger, and it will. Yes, right? It will. But I don't think Riot should have a monopoly over the League of Legends broadcast anyway. I just don't think Riot will ever do what you suggest, because I think Riot want their broadcast to be the biggest. Therefore, Riot will not,
makes perfect sense.
On the objective that you want the broadcast to be the biggest, they will never do that. So if you're saying this would improve the broadcast, no, actually you'll just like lose a lot of power on the broadcasting, because this is the only broadcast we have. It's better not to. But if Riot gave up on the monopoly on these kinds of broadcasting rights, then suddenly I would agree with the stuff that you are saying, but they're never going to do that. Okay. So as a result, you'll just ask League of Legends itself to tank.
What do you think? What do you think a scoundrel on this then?
I mean, I'm not at liberty to have too many opinions on the Riot monopoly thing. Just, I don't really want to put myself in a position that I would later regret. But what I do want to say is, and I think it'll be my last point, and I'll drop off. I think that Veteran would ideally like to create narratives that are purely based around analysis and creating analytical based narratives, simple or complex, around players and teams. We do not create narratives purely based on analysis. Narratives come under multiple sections, including hype, including player branding, including team branding, and analysis narratives make up a small portion of the overall narratives that go into a broadcast. And that's why when you have this full screen graphic with LIDER, which you says which arguably is massively oversimplified, which whenever you look at a player in a cross section like that, it's always going to be massively oversimplified. That is a hype narrative. That's get fucking excited for this guy that came from EU Masters and just got the joint most solo kills in any LEC game ever, and he's played 3 games of LEC or whatever it's been. That's a hype narrative. That's to get the viewers to be like, I want to follow this dude that I've never fucking heard of, because he looks like he's exciting. It's great for LIDER, it's great for Misfits, it's great for people's investment into the next game that they're going to see Misfits play in, whilst it may not give the true representation of what LIDER does, or how he gets there, or exactly like how he actually performs at a total level. It's mainly for those viewers that are often going to remain silent. And I'm not someone that buys massively into Reddit threads or into sort of the opinions that come from it, because realistically, 80 to 90% of your audience are silent enjoyers. They don't go to Reddit and comment.
More than that, probably, of course,
more than that. So, but the thing is, like, when you have these limited forms of feedback, the only forms of feedback that you're going to get are from
You've got to look at them, yeah. You've got to see which way the wind blows.
You've got to see what they're saying, because otherwise you're not going to improve your broadcast, or you're not going to improve your own craft. You're not going to improve anything. So yes, okay, we can say that Reddit isn't. We shouldn't pay attention to Reddit, but who the fuck are we going to pay attention to if we are paying attention to?
No. I agree. You should pay attention to your audience. I guess the best way to say it is that you shouldn't care or take it personal, or think it as like something that's necessarily like above you, or take it as like
basically, as he said earlier, the real problem he has there isn't even this whole setup, like which he doesn't like aspects of it. But his main point was, if you're Vedius, like, there's no point you complaining about like the way the narratives are going. Yes. Well, you did set the table for. It's like you set the table, you fucking cooked the meal, you served it, and then you were like, "This fucking turkey's a bit off." It's like, you cooked it, you motherfucker! Like I told you to make franks and beans. What are you doing?
Yeah, sure. And I do think the issue is far more for nuance than we kind of painted it with that broad brush there, because I don't think it's purely just about the narratives that Riot create. Often, and I think what the casters are talking about will be specific pieces of analysis or specific pieces of things that they're said in game on the fly. The non-prepared stuff is usually what gets brought up in these threads. Sure. I think it's very, very rare that you'll see a pre-prepared bit of analysis that we have on the LEC come up in a Reddit thread. It's usually what is said in game, and that is usually the stuff that's said on the fly that isn't prepared. And that's just a natural part of a caster's life. Sure. When you are talking for 35 to 40 minutes straight, sometimes you're going to say something that isn't quite 100% correct. Sometimes, and when I'm talking about my color casting back in the day, you're going to say something that's about 10% correct.
Oh, mate, the best one ever. You know this, mate. The best one ever is where, as you're saying the words, and it's like you're an LSD watching them coming out your mouth. You're watching words coming out. Go, holy fuck! Why am I saying that? That's not even right. Like I've even said the wrong player's name there. But the point is, in that moment, you can't go like, stop! It's not like being in a factory where someone's arm gets caught in the machine. You like hit that massive red button, like stop, grind to a halt. Let's help this guy out. It's like in that moment you have to go, like, unless there's another moment in the cast where I can address this, I've got to just be wrong on this and keep going. Like the game's keeping going. My caster needs to talk. You have to just take it on the chin sometimes.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's just part of the job.
Unfortunately, occupational hazard, right?
It is. It's an occupational hazard. And I remember my first EU Masters where I was in DMs with Veteran constantly because I was having to color cast, having bloody not done league color casting analysis for a very long time. And I was like, hey, Veteran, what the fuck am I saying? And Veteran was like, this is what you're going to say because you don't know shit all about League. And I was happy with that because I don't know shit all about League. And that's, well, like, I do know shit all about League, but you know what I mean, compared to where I think color caster should be.
Yes.
And I think, I came into the LEC team. I was nervous, but I think every single one of that team is brilliant at what they do. I think Frost has had the hardest challenge to overcome, but I think she's done a fucking good job. And
she hasn't helped herself in every respect there, but you know what? A lot of people haven't, so fair enough. So everyone's got baggage on that one.
But Frost puts in some insane amount of work. I mean, she is literally watching every fucking region every day of her life, like just trying to pick up everything she can about League of Legends, and I respect that. I really respect that. And Vedius talks to all the players. He's Deficio Mark II in a way that he tries to just get those opinions straight from the horse's mouth to make sure that the way he represents it is the way that the highest level of player would want it, represented. So, and Ender's, come in as the new guy. He's the green guy, but he's got great micro knowledge, and he's like really, really key on the micro stuff. So, all of the color casters and analysts that we've got, I think are great. And Veteran, stop making those eyes at me because I don't give a fuck what you're about to say. But
I wasn't going to say anything.
He wasn't going to say anything, man. I was all inside his mind. He was just going to let you keep saying what you need to say, apparently. Yeah. So.
No, sorry, mate. Yeah, no.
Sorry, you've hit all the... Listen, I'll tell you what. You've hit the check mark. You've successfully not missed anyone off the list there, so no one can tell conspicuously what you might think. And you've held up well. And I'll just say at the end, by the way, because I already know what way some people are going to take this, which actually perfectly loops in with the conversation we just had. Some people are going to take your earlier comments with Veteran and be like, wow, so Riot is just admitting that they just like purposely keep people in the dark and you're stupid. Nope. What he actually said, if you go back and listen, to the words he said and build up the concepts in your mind he was referring to, he actually gave a very nuanced explanation of how you try to give out information that can hit people on multiple different levels and appeal to all of the broadcast potentially. Now, if you can't get that, you're just going to be someone where it went over your head. But I actually thought you did a pretty good job of laying it out there. Like, it wasn't the case that, they're given fake narratives or stuff they don't believe in, etc. Like, that's definitely like a straw man version of that. So I'll just say that for all the people who inevitably will argue that after the fact.
Yeah, I really thanks for having me on the show. I know it's not a topic that you probably usually cover, but I really enjoyed coming on. It was good.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
All right, cheers, guys. I'll see you soon.
What I'll say is this, though. One thing that I think was probably miscommunicated on the conversation we just had there, Veteran, is like I think you painted it too black and white. I don't believe any of those now. Here's the thing. I will say there is a problem that infects esports desks to this day, which I have tried my best to stamp out, and you cannot stamp it out because there's a certain thinking. I'm going to explain it to you like this. Say 3 people are going to be the analyst for a game, and all 3 think FNATIC will beat Splice. You get a person in every motherfucking green room who goes, well, somebody should represent the other team, so I'm going to say Splice will win. And you go, but Barry, you just told us FNATIC will win. Yes, but somebody must represent. It's like, that isn't fair and balanced. Like, fair and balanced isn't like, well, what do you think about that public execution? Are we all in favour of it, against it? It's like, well, I'm against it, but someone's going to be in favour, so I think cut the motherfucker's head up. No, the point is, you are all supposed to say your actual opinion. Now, listen, if you want to do it where one of you says, for the sake of having someone give the other side, though, I'll give the devil's advocate position. Splice could win if they do X, Y, and Z, and if someone goes off. To be fair, that should already be part of analysis anyway. So aside from that example where essentially I'm saying someone does give a disingenuous opinion, I actually think most people are giving their opinion. I agree with you. Maybe they don't give them the space or even the tools to explain with nuance. That's probably true.
I got characterized like this so much. I don't need what they say to be full of nuanced opinions. I don't need them to educate people exactly how. I need it to be fucking true. So many people have been.
You think they're giving opinions they think aren't true?
They are giving. What he did just tell you, Thorin, is that they gave opinions based upon hype. All right, he didn't say that we gave them based upon hype and the fact that we analytically knew.
I mean, that was the way they crafted the opinion, certainly.
But there's so many narratives that have been built where no analysis has gone into it. It has been done based on hype. Leader 1 is incidentally true. Yes, you should be hyped for Leader. Yes, they did it off the back of the solo kills and stuff, though. And that matters because then you're going to have stuff like the greatest fraud ever perpetuated on the League of Legends European community was Huni, because they did that purely based on hype, purely based on stats. And then lo and behold, Immortals never got to qualify. SKT lost the world championship, blah, blah, blah. Why do you think he ended up on fucking Immortals and Echo Fox and all these teams? It's because they're fucking owners. Buy the narrative, buy the hype. If this many people are saying it, it must be true. Genuinely, Oda they lost opportunities because the narrative was a fucking lie. So many kids have lost their fucking jobs over it. Why do you think I was in DMs of Excoundrel years on the EU Masters? Because these kids' jobs are on the fucking line. And you're letting him off, by the way, like so easily. Like, yes, what he just told you is they don't fucking care if it's true. They care if it's an easy narrative to build and if there's hype around it. That's what pisses me off. And it will always.
No. You didn't understand what he said then. I guarantee you did. You didn't. That's not what he said at all. Listen, first of all, everyone's watching this as a VOD, mate. They can go back and listen. So you can't do that right now. So you can't do that in this moment. You're going to have to listen to me. I was listening to the conversation. What he absolutely said was the way that they craft the segment is based on that. So he said that they wouldn't, the narrative wouldn't be based on analysis, right? That's what he said. He said a very small percentage are based on analysis. Yes. When he says hype there, he doesn't mean a lie. I mean, I know that that's what the word hype means, sadly. To him, he thinks that
on hype, it might not.
Yeah, basically what he means by that, by the way, obviously I'm going to have to try and read his mind here, but that is the purpose of trying to communicate with people to know what the contents of their mind are. To me, when they say hype, because I agree, I personally think the word hype is a lie, but when they say hype, what they mean is, here's the biggest, most exciting version of this topic we want to talk about. So instead of the topic being, look at how Leader was set up to dominate the game, it's that he did dominate the game. Look at the kills he got. Like, wasn't that crazy? He's broken a record. I agree with you. If that was something else, because the problem is, that one's not a good example, mate, for how you ruin someone's career. Like, the problem with that angle is, I don't even know really how the Odo Amne one ties in. How does the Odo Amne one tie into how they do stuff on stream?
There were multiple teams in North America that were choosing between him and Huni. They all preferred.
And do you think it was based on between the two of them? Right, I see what the analogy was there. The problem I had with that is, as far as I could tell, Odoam, they did benefit from the narrative that he was a super sick Loic on top. I see what you mean. If someone's picking between the two,
yes. But
I see what you mean. If you're picking between the two, you'd never pick
example where you could obviously say that, and it's the most easily recognizable example for everyone. That's why I chose it. But obviously, there are so many more examples of players that have been unfairly characterized as the problem because certain other players on their team were held up as being like the absolute be all end all of the team when it was actually false. No, I don't think that when he says hype that he thinks or that he's consciously aware that he's essentially saying that there's a lie. But what he is saying is that if the hype thing is true, it's actually incidental that it's true because it's not coming from a place of analysis. It's just not. That's why so many of their narratives are so wrong, because they're coming at it on the place of like really surface level hype stuff. If it is true, that's going to be incidental. It pisses me off that people think that that's fine, that that's acceptable.
The thing I'll say though is like, because the other angle as well on this, which I noticed I thought we were going to go into this there, but luckily we didn't, is when he was saying about like, the term I always hear used, and the second a player or coach tells me this, I won't say it to their face on a show because I have to have a discussion with the guy for the next 2 hours, but the second a player or coach uses the term responsibility, I just want to go, fuck you. Where's your fucking responsibility to me? Like the idea that I'm like, when I give my real opinion on someone of something I thought and I've thought it through and I have principles and a model of the game and I then say my opinion and cause they disagree, they're like, to be responsible to me in my career, you should say what I think about your game. It's like, no, my job is to say what I think. That's my responsibility. At no point in time am I responsible for how you carried 10 scrims on that champion but was shit on it in the LEC. I'm only responsible for what I think of when you played in the LEC. If you're garbage in the LEC, I'll say it. I don't care that in scrims, you were doing stuff, or someone tells me privately, but Thorin, the way that we set him up in the game wasn't able to do it. That's irrelevant. That is all irrelevant. It's nice info to have, and I'll take it on board, but I'll never parrot what the player tells me. Like, that's why one angle that kills me is when analysts say, like, but I talk to the pros. Like, then you actually are an enemy of yourself. You are battling yourself right now, mate. Because guess what? That pro himself might change his opinion in 6 months. He himself can't. He can't get distance from himself, can he? So he's got his own insanely biased opinion about himself and his team. And also, the final detail on that is, this responsibility is a fucking impossible equation that cannot add up. Because guess what? Within people's own teams, they don't have a telepathic mind link. People in their own teams disagree with each other and think differently about how other players are used. So how could I take the top laner's opinion, the jungle's opinion, and the support player's opinion, expect them all to line up and then represent them all when I'm not any of those people? I can't do that. Like, the best I can do is I'll try and take on board it. Because you know the other angle they always say to people like you and me is like, you get coaches who are friends who are like, just contact me if you want to know. It's like, motherfucker, that's not all. Like, I don't need to just know from you. Like, oh, well, if he says it, it must be true. Like, no, the best I can do is take all the info and then still give you my opinion. So that's why I agree. Don't ever lie. But I would hope that was the premise anyway, mate. Like I told you, I've been battling that in green rooms for a long time.
Try to accept the responsibility that you have. Like, again, it's not, I mean, yeah, obviously all the players will be biased, but again, it's not the player's job to be an expert in LEC. That's your fucking job. And you need to understand that the narratives that you create have ridiculous consequences. It's fucking because it's such a monopoly. Like, there's nowhere else in the entirety of esports where you've ever had a single broadcast have as much power as it does. And if these guys then come on and say, yeah, well, we put up the leader stuff because it's hype, and they don't mention at all that there was any sort of like actual analysis going into it, it's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense because there's just been so many things you guys have brought up that are just straight up fucking wrong. All right, and if you're not trying to make sure that the shit you're saying is true on the only outlet by which the market will ever gather its opinion, especially when you've now franchised the fucking league, then obviously it's going to piss me off. That's tantamount to lying. You just don't care about the truth.
I'll tell you the sad thing about this though, Veteran. Here's the sad thing, and this is a depressing realization if you think about it. Mate, they've already come so much further with the European broadcast for League of Legends than I ever thought they would in a Riot Games game. Like, to have even pushed it this far, mate, is a miracle. Like, it's not a coincidence, Veteran, that every person who would be really well suited to give the kind of analysis you're talking about is explicitly blacklisted from the motherfucking industry by Riot Games. They don't want any of the things you're talking about. And I know what you mean. You're not arguing that. You're arguing like the idealized case. But put it this way, the only game you can do that in, the only game is CSGO. It's the only one. And that's just because it's the only one where the game dev doesn't interfere.
Yes.
And and it's separate companies. Because the point in the point in CSGO for people who don't follow it is, let's say I did an event for ESL and they thought my, like, let's say the tone of my analysis was off. Well, the point is, if the market likes it, maybe Faceit hires me instead, and I just go and do it for Faceit. In this scenario, if Valve ran the broadcast for ESL and they decide they don't like it, I just cannot work on camera. Like, I'm out of the game. So unfortunately, I know what you're saying. It's just you will never live in the world you're talking about, sadly. In fact, we're kind of doing the best we can to even up the playing field.
Yeah, that's why literally it comes down to me too. You have to break up the Riot monopoly. But like, obviously, and then when you do view the world in this fucking lens, like, and you understand the level of responsibility that things have, and but at the same time, people I seem to recognize that responsibility are doing the problem. Like, I mean, okay, fuck it. Just really simple way. This is why when they leave the Matrix, it's a fucking post-apocalyptic barbaric world that they never really want to be in. This is why people prefer to stay plugged into the Matrix.
Of course, that steak tastes more delicious, mate. Exactly, the hype for that steak is amazing. Look at it; it's an 8-ounce steak. It's a porterhouse. It comes from Argentina. Look at the marbling on it right here. Must be the best steak ever, right? And fucking filet mignon. What are you talking about? Look at this fucking steak. Yes, and that's it. Look at the sizzle. In comes Vidius with the sizzle. Maybe I'm Vidius as a cowboy. Yeehaw! Welcome to this next segment of this. We're going to chop it up right now. You get your steaks. Anyway, whatever. That's the end of the fucking show. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, NateDOhDoubleG, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Dean Tanglis, Wendelful, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, Daniel Olivar, Chi Mao, JDubs, Kolja G, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, and a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion and weixz. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Perhaps you'd like to ask me a question for my monthly video AMA. Do you want teasers or who the guests are for my upcoming videos? Maybe you want to take part in a monthly donate a discussion with me. Well, all of these perks and more are available at the Patreon link in the description box below.